Chapter 851. Originally, Xiao Huan couldn't invite Chu Luqian, the son of the emperor, to his marriage. But because Xiao Wanru was going to marry Prince Chen soon, it was reasonable for Prince Chen to come and greet him. Unexpectedly, Prince Chen not only came in person, but also brought several of his brothers. The scene in front immediately became serious. It was a good thing, and it could be regarded as Prince Chen's support for his future princess. Duke Xing's mansion was also happy to see it. They invited these princes into the banquet. In order to avoid being disturbed, they specially found a quiet place for them and held a private banquet. Xiao Jing accompanied them in person. After Xiao Huan toasted outside, he also came here to toast to thank them. Chu Luqian was in poor health, so no one dared to persuade him to drink. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou naturally drank with Xiao Jing. They were originally fine, but when Xiao Huan came over, they somehow made a scene. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou seemed to be unwilling to accept each other. They actually left Xiao Huan, the groom, and competed with each other in drinking. In the end, they got drunk and even fought with each other. When the son of the emperor and the grandson of the emperor fought, the people next to them didn't dare to watch. However, it was not easy to separate them, so they also led their servants to fight. The inner courtyard was in a mess. The only one who could stop them, Prince Chen, sat far away and didn't intend to go forward to stop them. Although everyone knew that he couldn't go forward, with his poor health, if he was accidentally hit by them and his body couldn't bear it, it would be a big trouble. But at this time, there was no one in charge. Duke Xing's mansion could only think of Prince Chen. However, the people sent by Duke Xing's mansion couldn't reach Prince Chen. The people of Prince Yu's mansion and Prince Zhou's mansion fought with each other. The people brought by Prince Chen blocked the circle for fear that they would hurt Prince Chen. Prince Chen sat in the circle safely. Old Madam had no choice but to think of Xiao Wanru. She wanted Xiao Wanru to send someone to tell Chu Luqian and ask him to separate the two sides. Old Madam did not forget that Prince Chen came in person when they sent the betrothal gifts, which meant that Prince Chen valued Xiao Wanru. No matter whether it was because of Xiao Wanru or the Empress Dowager, at least it could be used at this time. Old Madam was desperate at this time. Grandma, I'm afraid it's impossible to ask Prince Chen to come here, but it should be possible to send a message. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and said. It could be seen that she was not sure. However, this was also reasonable. After all, she had not married into Prince Chen's mansion yet and did not know much about Prince Chen's mind. Old Madam thought for a while and gave in. Go and send a message for me. Ask Prince Chen to find a way to stop Prince Yu and Prince Zhou. Duke Xing's mansion must be very grateful. At this point, Old Madam only hoped that this matter could be covered up a little. The guests outside were still there, but it had become like this inside. If it was spread out, not only the dignity of the royal family would be lost, but also the entire Duke Xing's mansion would be implicated. Xiao Wanru was silent for a moment. She called Yujie and asked her to send the message. Yujie cautiously came to the door of the main room and poked her head in. In fact, the two princes in the main room had been separated by their own men, but they were still a little unconscious and still wanted to struggle. Chu Luqian leisurely held the teacup in his hand, and his eyes were as calm as water. He lowered his head, as if he did not hear the noise around him. He was very calm. Master, Yujie is coming. Xiao Xuanzi stood beside him and suddenly saw the servant girl poking her head out of the door. Call her over. Chu Luqian said. Xiao Xuanzi answered, got out of the crowd, and brought Yujie over. Yujie stepped forward to salute and told Chu Luqian what Old Madam had said. A trace of evil flashed in Chu Luqian's eyes. He patted his wide sleeves and stood up. It was the right time. Seeing that he got up and was about to walk out of the crowd, Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly followed him and asked other people of Prince Chen's mansion to follow him. The two groups of people were still quarreling because of the fight between the two masters, and Chu Luqian's men intervened forcefully. Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou still wanted to make trouble. Both of them were drunk, and their faces and necks were red. They struggled to get rid of the pull of their men. Pull the two masters away. Chu Luchen said coldly with a gloomy look in his eyes, if anyone can't even pull his master away, he doesn't want his life. His words scared the people who followed Prince Yu and Prince Zhou and made them tremble. They didn't dare to pull the two masters hard at first, but now they held them tightly with their hands and didn't dare to let go, for fear of provoking Prince Chen in front of them. How could those who often walked in the palace not know that this master was not as handsome and gentle as he looked? When he got angry, no one could stop him. Hurry up and take them away. Do you want the two princes to beat our master? Xiao Xuanzi shouted and glared at the two groups of people fiercely. The two groups of people immediately came to their senses and hurriedly pulled their masters back. If they really hit this master and something happened, no one present would be able to get away with it. They didn't dare to use force at first, but now they used all their strength. They pulled their masters back to a chair, but the two masters still glared at each other, as if they would pounce on each other if they couldn't pull them back. They were obviously not sober. The best way was to pour cold water on their heads and faces to make them sober. But no one dared to do that because of the status of these two masters. Send 2 cups of cold water to the two princes. The colder, the better. Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Jing and Xiao Hua, and who were standing aside and said lightly. Xiao Hua and immediately reacted and hurriedly turned around to give the order. After a while, a servant brought 2 cups of water to the two princes. Drink it. Chu Luchen said coldly. His handsome face revealed a gloomy look, which was so cold that no one dared to approach him. His strong momentum made the people on both sides hesitated, but they still did as he said. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were forced to drink more than half a cup of water. After struggling for a while, they pushed away the people who were pressing them, took a few steps back and covered their mouths with their hands. Prince Yu couldn't bear it first, and the servants hurriedly helped him to vomit. Prince Zhou didn't last long and was also helped to the side. Seeing the messy room, Xiao Jing hurriedly asked people to tidy it up. Your Highness, what should we do now? Coming to Chu Luchen, Xiao Jing's face was full of worry. This matter couldn't be hidden any longer, and the imperial palace would definitely get the news. Duke Xing, why don't you find out why this happened? Chu Luchen asked coldly. Xiao Jing was stunned and didn't react for a moment. He looked at Chu Luchen in astonishment and didn't understand what he meant. Eldest brother and second brother have always been self-disciplined. How could they lose control like this? Duke Xing, you'd better find out the reason, in case you have nothing to answer when my uncle asks. Chu Luchen walked out. The room smelled a little too bad, and it was really not a good place to walk. Prepare a flower hall and help Prince Yu and Prince Zhou there. Your Highness, it's in the yard next door. It's already prepared. Xiao Jing was stunned and said hurriedly. The room was full of smells, and it was indeed not a good place to talk. Xiao Jing asked Xiao Hua and to lead Chu Luchen away first. After standing in the corridor for a while, Xiao Jing hurried to the wing room next door to report to Old Madam. It was a mess here just now, so it was not convenient for Old Madam to come over. In the wing room, Old Madam and Xiao Wanru were listening to the news. Yujie had come back to report to them, and she also saw from the window that the two princes were helped out. But Yujie couldn't tell the details. How is it going? Old Madam looked anxious. Seeing Xiao Jing come in, she hurriedly asked. The two princes should wake up. Xiao Jing couldn't figure out the meaning of this, so he could only say. He frowned hard, and he hadn't come to his senses yet. The two princes, who had always been handsome in front of others, were fighting. Moreover, they were fighting like this. He saw that the two of them had hurt their faces just now. What the hell is going on? Why did the two princes fight? Old Madam patted the table hard and said angrily. Duke Xing's mansion had to come up with a regulation on this matter. When the emperor asked about it, they could have an explanation. Just now, Prince Chen said. Speaking of this, Xiao Jing glanced at his niece beside him. Seeing that she was just sitting with her head down, he turned his eyes back and said, "He asked us to check if there was anything unusual at the banquet. He said that the two princes are self-disciplined people and shouldn't lose their composure like this." Xiao Jing felt a headache and annoyed. He didn't want to get involved in the affairs of Prince Yu and Prince Zhou now. His eldest daughter's plan had failed. At this time, he shouldn't get close to the two princes. Because his son was getting married, he just sent an invitation according to the etiquette and did nothing else. But he didn't expect that the two princes would really come. Since they were here, he had to receive them. What was more unexpected was that the two princes, who had always been very dignified in front of others, would lose their composure like this. "Then go and check it out." Old Madam gritted her teeth and said. But this, how is it possible?" Xiao Jing looked at Old Madam with his eyes wide open in disbelief. Did it mean that it really had something to do with his mansion? "Since it's impossible, we have to check it out. If necessary, we can find someone," Old Madam said with gloomy eyes. After saying this, Old Madam paused for a moment, turned her eyes and glanced at Xiao Wanru. She took a deep breath and looked a little more gentle. "Fifth maid, you go back first. If there's anything, I'll call you later. You're tired. Go back to your courtyard and have a rest." Of course, she didn't want Xiao Wanru to be present. Xiao Wanru stood up sensibly, bowed deeply to Old Madam and Xiao Jing, and then left slowly with Yujie. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, concealing the inexplicable deepness in her eyes. This pair of mother and son always gave her a very uncomfortable feeling. Now, she did not know what this pair of mother and son were plotting again. Chapter 852. Before Xiao Wanru entered Duke Xing's mansion, she saw that Madam of Duke Xing and Old Madam were in charge of the affairs of the inner court. However, Old Madam was old, so everything was handled by Madam of Duke Xing. Madam of Duke Xing was the master in the inner court of Duke Xing's mansion. She could tell that the third madam was plotted against by her. As for her second uncle, he was not an ordinary person. He not only knew about the affairs of the inner court, but also controlled the affairs of the outer court. He was also very respected in front of the emperor. But in fact, what she saw in front of her told her that Old Madam had never let go of the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion. Whenever there was something important, her second uncle would definitely come to discuss it with Old Madam. That was to say, as long as it was a big matter, Old Madam would intervene. After Madam of Duke Xing's mansion left, the reason why the third madam could control the affairs of the inner court of Duke Xing's mansion so quickly was because of Old Madam's support. That was to say, Old Madam seemed to be indifferent, but in fact, she had been holding the power of Duke Xing's mansion tightly. The power was not only in the inner court but also in the outer court. Some decisions should be made by her. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand so tightly that she felt a tingling pain in her palm through the handkerchief. Then she slowly relaxed her hand, but the tingling pain was still there and slowly slid into her heart. Because of this speculation, the matter in her heart became heavier and heavier, and she became more and more furious. If this was really the case, Old Madam's mind could not be described as a snake or a scorpion. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, let alone a human. Walking out of the courtyard, she looked under the tree in front of her and saw Xiao Xuanzi looking around. Seeing them coming out, he hurriedly ran over with a smile. "Greetings, fifth miss," Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile and came up to salute respectfully. "What's the matter?" Xiao Wanru asked in surprise. "Shouldn't Xiao Xuanzi be with Chu Luqian at this time?" "Master asked me to ask fifth miss if you were in charge of anything today," Xiao Xuanzi asked with a smile. He looked very lively, which was completely different from his expression in front of Xiao Jing and Old Madam. "I was in charge of the tea room today and helped deal with some other things. It has nothing to do with the food and drinks." Xiao Wanru immediately understood what he meant. Her heart suddenly softened and she answered softly. Hearing Old Madam and Xiao Jing's words, she knew that if they insisted on blaming Duke Xing's mansion for this matter, Xing's mansion would send someone to deal with it. This person could not be Madame Dowager herself, nor could it be Xiao Jing. Of course, it could not be Xiao Hua then. Then, it was hard to say who else could it be. One thing was for sure, a mere slave wouldn't be able to do such a thing. No matter how shameless a slave was, he wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Xiao Wanru was in charge of the pantry. The problem was that she didn't prepare enough pastries. She only prepared sweet pastries that they all thought were good, but she didn't expect that some people didn't like this kind of sweetness or didn't like this kind of oversweet pastries. However, because of this, she didn't make the sweet spring rolls that she was supposed to help the kitchen make. All the food at the banquet had nothing to do with her. I did send some pastries here before, but your highnesses don't like sweet food, so they didn't work. Xiao Xuanzi immediately understood Xiao Wanru's meaning, rolled his eyes, and answered. The pastries were also sent over. There were two kinds of pastries. One smelled sweet, and the other was spring rolls with bean paste. The princes didn't like sweet food, so no one touched them. The reason why Xiao Xuanzi remembered it so clearly was that he also advised his master to eat some at that time, but his master didn't use it. He deliberately glanced at the other two masters and found that they didn't eat either. It could be seen that they didn't like it. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and understood Xiao Xuanzi's meaning. Xiao Xuanzi, thank you. Yu Jie was very clever and hurriedly thanked him. Don't thank me. If you want to thank me, thank me. I'm afraid that the fifth miss will be involved in it. Although nothing serious will happen with my master's protection, this kind of thing is not good. It may cause some gossip. Xiao Xuanzi cleverly put the blame on his master, smiled like a flower, and made a good impression in front of his future princess. What he said was to protect Xiao Wanru on behalf of Chu Luchen. Thank you, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru couldn't help smiling, slightly raised her lips, and said. Okay, I'll send the message right away. Xiao Xuanzi said happily. His master would definitely be happy after hearing this. After saying that, he bowed to Xiao Wanru and ran to another courtyard nearby. Seeing Xiao Xuanzi enter this courtyard, which should be the place to discuss the next thing, she rolled her watery eyes and walked slowly to the inner courtyard. The next thing was not something she could intervene in. Fortunately, Chu Luchen was here. As long as she thought of this, she felt at peace in her heart. She gently bit her lip and felt inexplicably at ease. She was no longer helpless and could only grit her teeth. Fifth sister, what happened? Xiao Caihuan hurried over and asked hurriedly when she saw Xiao Wanru. She had just got the news and rushed over. I heard that the two princes had a fight. Grandma asked me to find Prince Chen, Xiao Wanru said simply. Fight? How could it be? Xiao Caihuan's face changed dramatically and she asked nervously. I don't know the reason, maybe they drank too much. Xiao Wanru answered vaguely. She really couldn't answer this question. Grandma and second uncle are still talking about it inside, so they asked me to go back first. She pointed to the courtyard she had just come out of and said. Inside? Are they all inside? Xiao Caihuan said in a panic, looking very nervous. Grandma and second uncle are inside, and the others went to the other side. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Fifth sister, let's go in and listen, okay? Xiao Caihuan grabbed Xiao Wanru's sleeve nervously. Xiao Wanru really didn't expect this. She looked at Xiao Caihuan in astonishment. Old Madam and Xiao Jing had already said that obedient juniors should stay away at this time. How could she have such an idea? Xiao Caihuan didn't seem to be such a disobedient person in the past, but she was a little abnormal today. Seeming to notice Xiao Wanru's doubts, Xiao Caihuan hurriedly explained, today's incident in the inner courtyard was organized by my mother. Grandma will definitely blame my mother for it. But what does it have to do with my mother? I didn't expect that the two princes were so bad at drinking that they couldn't drink more than a few cups. Didn't drink more than a few cups? How do you know, third sister? Xiao Wanru asked keenly, glancing at Xiao Caihuan's panicked eyes. I don't know. According to the people who came to report, how could they be so drunk? The two princes have always been in good health. Xiao Caihuan lowered her head. She seemed to be explaining, but also seemed to be talking to herself. She was very flustered. If they are not in good health, how many cups do they need? Xiao Wanru said thoughtfully. Xiao Caihuan suddenly raised her head, as if she had been greatly frightened. Her hand fell from Xiao Wanru's sleeve, and she could feel that her hand had trembled fiercely just now. Her expression was almost tense. I don't know. She stammered. Then she saw Xiao Wanru frown slightly and her eyes become more and more confused. She hurriedly tried to remedy the situation and said with a dry smile, I'm afraid that this matter will affect my mother. You know, Grandma has always disliked my mother. Grandma likes second aunt the most. If something happens this time, maybe. Speaking of this, Xiao Caihuan was really flustered. The implication was that she was afraid that old madam and Xiao Jing would blame it on the third madam. Fifth sister, can you accompany me to listen to it? I can definitely explain it. Xiao Caihuan looked at Xiao Wanru imploringly, and her eyes turned red with anxiety. My mother really doesn't know anything. She has been in poor health. Since what happened 3 years ago, she has been in poor health. Now that second aunt is gone, she is just struggling to be the housekeeper. She can't control herself in many ways. Xiao Wanru looked at her extremely calmly and stepped aside. Third sister, you can go in. Second uncle and grandma are inside. Fifth sister, I don't dare. Can you accompany me in? Xiao Caihuan didn't move her feet. She still looked at Xiao Wanru with tears in her eyes and said sadly, even if we don't go in, it's good for us to listen to them. We won't let grandma and second uncle find out. Grandma and second uncle have already let me out. If I go in again, it will be deliberately disobeying them. Third sister, you don't want me to disobey the two elders, do you? Third sister, you can go in by yourself. If grandma and second uncle ask about it later, I will say that I didn't tell you about it just now. They won't blame you and just take it as an accident. Xiao Wanru shook her head extremely calmly and said. He said this for Xiao Caihuan's sake. Regardless of whether Xiao Caihuan wanted to eavesdrop or rush in, it was better not to know than to do it knowingly. He could help her make a false certificate, which could be regarded as helping her. Xiao Caihuan's face changed greatly, and her face suddenly became cold. She took a step back and hid the panic and fear in her eyes. She looked at Xiao Wanru coldly and said with disappointment, Fifth sister, I really misjudged you. How can you be so cold-blooded and heartless? What kind of person do you think I am, third sister? Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows. I thought you were at least warm-hearted, gentle and good. Although you are not close to second aunt, it is also because second aunt has always wanted to frame you up. But my mother has always been very good to you, and I also want to be on good terms with you. Why are you so indifferent and don't want to help my mother when she is in trouble? Xiao Caihuan said angrily with tears in her eyes, which were about to fall down. She looked aggrieved and angry. Xiao Wanru's eyes became more and more deep. She turned her eyes, and a trace of coldness, which almost penetrated people's hearts, fell on Xiao Caihuan. Xiao Caihuan subconsciously took another step back, avoided Xiao Wanru's eyes, and inexplicably felt a little guilty. Chapter 853. Third sister, I want to say that you are wrong. I have never been a good person. Xiao Wanru said coldly. You. Xiao Caihuan's words were stuck in her throat. She stared at Xiao Wanru in a daze and opened her mouth slightly, but couldn't say a word. It shouldn't be like this. Shouldn't Xiao Wanru explain and go in with her? Third sister, in fact, I am really not a good person, nor a stupid person, so, some smart aleck things, don't play tricks on me. It's a waste of energy. Grandma will definitely recommend someone this time. I don't know if it will be third aunt. It has nothing to do with me. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth slightly, but her eyes were still cold. The faint smile was not as deep as her eyes, which made people feel a little sarcastic. Xiao Caihuan opened her mouth subconsciously and didn't know where to start. She could only watch Xiao Wanru leave. "Miss, what should we do?" The servant girl stammered. "Let's go in." Xiao Caihuan gritted her teeth and wiped the tears under the veil with a handkerchief. She was determined in her heart, but inexplicably felt guilty and scared. When did Xiao Wanru become so terrible? Why was she different from what she had imagined? Hadn't her fifth sister always been very good to her? She had always been respectful to her. Why was she different from what she had imagined? Her fifth sister shouldn't be like this. Did she know something? An idea suddenly appeared in her mind, which made her stop after a few steps and look at Xiao Wanru's back behind her in horror. After a while, Xiao Wanru had walked to the entrance of a moon cave in front of her and then slowly disappeared from her sight. Her fingers couldn't help trembling. When she was stiff just now, she didn't realize that her fingers were cold. At this time, she felt a kind of chill. Xiao Wanru felt the same as she had thought. If it was true. Xiao Wanru would never be very good to her, let alone speak up for her so easily. Xiao Caihuan felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on her head, which made her heart cold. Not only was her heart trembling, but her whole body was shaking uncontrollably, and her face was as pale as snow. Had she been tricked? "Caihuan?" A doubtful voice came from behind. Xiao Caihuan turned around stiffly and saw Xiao Jing looking at her with displeasure. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Second uncle. Why are you here?" Xiao Jing looked at his third niece and asked. It was obvious that he was in a bad mood because his eyebrows were still knitted tightly. "I heard that something happened here, so my mother asked me to come and have a look. She is not in good health, so she went to lie down for a while." Xiao Caihuan quickly calmed down and explained. "Your grandmother is inside. Go back with her. You can't interfere in this matter," Xiao Jing said coldly. After that, he ignored Xiao Caihuan and turned to the side yard. Xiao Caihuan stood stiffly at the door for a while before walking in. Now she could only take one step at a time. She had to see her grandmother first. Besides, few people knew about this matter, so it was impossible for her to be the one who had done it. The fight between the two princes was not kept a secret after all. It slowly spread to the guests outside, and the guests who had not left immediately talked about it. Now only the third master of Duke Xing's mansion was greeting the guests outside, and the other masters were nowhere to be seen. This made the guests outside more and more certain that this matter was true. Some people went to talk to the third master Xiao about this matter, but the third master Xiao really didn't know anything. He even waved his hand generously and said that it was impossible. How could such a thing happen? Seeing that he said it casually, everyone was dubious. But at this time, someone saw the appearance of Prince Yu and Prince Zhou when they left. The two princes' faces were bruised and swollen, and their clothes were messy and torn. At a glance, it was obvious that they had fought. Moreover, the two princes had cold faces all the way. Although they came out together, they didn't look at each other. There was really something wrong here. After the two princes left, the others saw Duke Xing, who had arrived late, and the first young master, who had gotten married today. Although the two of them spoke gently, their expressions were very stiff. It was obvious that something had happened at a glance. Everyone sensibly said goodbye and left one by one, leaving only some close friends who were still waiting for the dinner in the evening. After entrusting these close friends to his third brother, Xiao Jing took Xiao Hua into Old Madam's Chuntang courtyard. Old Madam had helped to investigate the matter in the inner courtyard before, so they went there to ask if Old Madam had found anything. As for the bridal chamber, Xiao Hua and also asked someone to tell the new madam that he had something important to do here and would go to see her later. When the father and son came over, Old Madam was sitting in the room with a cold face. Beside her, the third madam lowered her head slightly and didn't dare to breathe too much. She looked very nervous. She was in poor health, and now she was even paler than before, almost as thin as a piece of paper. Xiao Caihuan stood behind her mother with her head lowered, so that no one could see the expression on her face. Mother, how is the investigation going? Does this matter have anything to do with our mansion? After bowing to old madam, Xiao Jing sat down on one side and immediately asked anxiously. Xiao Hua looked at old madam, whose face was as pale as a piece of paper, and also sat down on the other side of Xiao Jing. You are all vile creatures. Old madam patted the table heavily. The third madam couldn't sit still anymore. She knelt down with a plop, covered her face and cried, Mother, it's all my fault. I'm in poor health, so I used to be a little lax. Although I assigned some things to the third miss and the fifth miss this time, I was still a little tired, so I took a break for a while. I didn't expect such a mess to happen. Vile creature, vile creature. Old madam patted the armrest of the chair loudly, flustered and exasperated. Mother, do you mean that this matter really has something to do with our mansion? Xiao Jing looked at his sister-in-law, who was kneeling on the ground, and then looked at old madam, asking with a cold face. Originally, even if this matter had nothing to do with his mansion, he would still be reprimanded by the emperor. If it really had something to do with his mansion, the emperor would punish him severely. Xiao Jing couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He looked at the third madam, who was kneeling on the ground, with more anger. This matter does have something to do with it. Old madam said angrily, it said that someone sent a pot of medicinal wine for the princes to drink. The medicinal effect is not very strong. In fact, it's not a particularly strong wine. It has some tonic ingredients. The steward of the mansion went to tell her. She also thought it was good, so she sent it. Sent medicinal wine and tonics. Xiao Jing's face changed greatly. He stared at the kneeling third madam in astonishment and said sternly, What the hell is going on? Who wants to hurt Prince Chen? Since it was medicinal wine, ordinary people would just drink it. Even if they were a little drunk, it would be nothing. However, Prince Chen was not included. If he drank a little, no one knew what would happen. If he vomited blood on the spot or his life was in danger, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would have to be buried with him. Xiao Jing was not stupid. He immediately thought of Prince Chen who came with them today. Moreover, Prince Chen was the most likely one to come. Last time, when he sent the betrothal gifts, Prince Chen came to show that he valued Xiao Wanru. If there was a happy occasion in Duke Xing's mansion, he was very likely to come here to support the situation. Second uncle, I didn't know that Prince Chen would also come. The steward said that since the princes were coming, could we prepare better wine? Medicinal wine would also be fine. I agreed and sent the medicinal wine that was treasured in the mansion. I thought that it was not a big deal. Besides, this medicinal wine was not very strong. Even I could drink a cup occasionally in the past. The third madam cried and explained. You. Old madam pointed at the third madam angrily and said angrily, Can you compare with Prince Chen? Your body can stand it, but it doesn't mean that Prince Chen can stand it. Fortunately, Prince Chen is fine this time, otherwise. Old madam shivered all over and sweated heavily when she thought of the consequences. The current situation was already the best. Fortunately, Prince Chen was not a good drinker. Mother, uncle, I really didn't know it would be like this. The third madam cried. Old madam was so angry that she couldn't speak. Xiao Jing looked at the kneeling third madam with cold eyes and disgust. Xiao Caihuan didn't dare to move at all. She only felt that her whole body was numb. The current situation was completely different from what she had imagined. How could it be like this? Why did it become like this? Xiao Hua coughed in a low voice and said, Third aunt, get up first. Since this matter has happened, there should be a plan. Come on, help third aunt up. Third aunt is not in good health. She can't really kneel and hurt herself. An old maid looked at old madam's face and saw her nod slightly. She hurried over to help the third madam up and sit down in a chair aside. Grandmother, we can't hide this matter now. Xiao Hua looked at old madam sitting in the first seat and said. Then what should we do? Old Madam said angrily. Even though she had experienced many storms, she felt that the current situation was more dangerous than this. She didn't like the daughter-in-law of the third branch, and now she didn't like her at all. Sure enough, she was not as reliable as her grandson's daughter-in-law. It seemed that the affairs of the inner courtyard had to be managed by someone else. Grandmother, let's tell the truth. Third aunt promised and the steward went to do it. It should be easy to find out along the way. If we deal with this group of people, it will arouse the emperor's anger. It's better to gather these people together and wait for the emperor's people to come. Then we'll send them together and let the emperor investigate. Xiao Hua thought for a while and said. If they didn't deal with this matter in this way, there was no better way to deal with it. Old Madam and Xiao Jing nodded repeatedly at his words. They looked at each other and also felt that this was the best way to deal with the matter. They couldn't let the emperor suspect Duke Xing's mansion, so Duke Xing's mansion didn't do anything now and just waited for the follow-up. No, you can't do this. Grandmother, you can't do this. Chapter 854. Xiao Caihuan clenched the handkerchief in her hands tightly, suppressed the panic in her heart and said anxiously. Xiao Jing frowned and ignored her. Madame Dowager's face darkened and she was about to get angry. Xiao Hua was calm. He looked at Xiao Caihuan and asked, why did you say that, third sister? Is there something else that you can't let others know? What's the matter, third girl? Madame Dowager also heard something and said sternly. Xiao Caihuan's hands trembled, and then her whole body trembled. She managed to restrain the panic in her heart and gritted her teeth, saying, Grandma, if the servants implicate Mother in this matter, how will she deal with it? Xiao Caihuan said and cried, Grandma, Mother didn't want to take care of the affairs of the mansion. You know that she is in poor health. Even if she could take care of it, she couldn't. If you didn't ask Mother to take care of it again and again, Mother would just recuperate. How could such a thing happen? Hearing her daughter's words, the third madam thought that she really didn't want to take care of it at that time. Now the disaster made her feel that it was not in vain. She lowered her head and wiped her tears with her handkerchief. She did refuse several times at that time. Although the reason was not that she didn't want to take care of the family, she just wanted to be pretentious. But now she felt that she didn't want to take care of the family at that time, and Madame Dowager forced her to take care of it. The more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged and felt that she had suffered an inexplicable disaster. How could such a thing happen when she was recuperating in the house? 3 years ago, after I was hit by a car, I didn't recover completely. My body has long been ruined. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no one in the Fu to take care of me, I wouldn't interfere in the family affairs. Mother, I would rather die like this 3 years ago. At least I can have a good ending. The third madam sobbed. Xiao Caihuan turned back and hugged her, crying with her. The mother and daughter cried, and everyone in the room frowned. Xiao Hua, then, needless to say, was happy. Today was his big day, but the mother and daughter were crying like they were at a funeral. If it weren't for his good self-restraint, he would have fallen out with her. Both Xiao Jing and old madam didn't look good. The reason why the third madam was injured in the accident 3 years ago was because of Madame Zhang's scheme. From this point of view, the second branch owed the third branch. Sister-in-law, niece's marriage has already been discussed. Xiao Jing couldn't help coughing, reminding third madam not to forget that he had promised to let Xiao Caihuan marry Xiao Jia, as compensation to the third branch. The third madam stopped crying and turned her head to look at her daughter. Although her face was covered with a gauze, her eyes were red and swollen from crying. At this moment, she became more and more sad. Mother, second uncle, if you really want me to take responsibility for this, I will take responsibility. But everyone knows that I am sick. Even if someone wants to hurt Prince Chen, he must have inquired about this. For the sake of her daughter's marriage, the third madam had to give in, but she also left herself a way out. Everyone in the mansion knew that she was in poor health, and they also knew that it was impossible for her to manage everything. Many things had to be handled by her people, and then reported to her in the end. Today's wedding banquet was not over, and some things had not been reported to her, so she was completely unaware of it. This was indeed a fact. If it weren't for her daughter, she wouldn't even know that such a disaster had happened in the mansion. "Mother!" Xiao Caihuan cried, and her tears wetted the gauze in front of her. "Well, you two can go back first. We will definitely investigate this matter, but the emperor has to give the order. Our mansion can't make the decision, and I can't promise you that there's nothing wrong with it." Xiao Jing waved his hand impatiently and became more and more annoyed in his heart. There were so many things to do, and he didn't want to see the mother and daughter being so depressed anymore. Old Madam nodded and didn't want the third madam to stay here anymore. It was really not a good thing for her to spoil things. Xiao Caihuan still wanted to say something, but Old Madam's servants had unquestionably helped the third madam up, so she had to follow them out. When they arrived at the third madam's courtyard, Old Madam's servants left. The third madam waved her hand, and other servant girls and old maids also followed her out, leaving only the third madam and Xiao Caihuan in the room. "Tell me, what's going on?" The third madam wiped away her tears, looked at Xiao Caihuan with red eyes, and said seriously. She was in poor health, but it didn't mean that she was really stupid. "Mother." Xiao Caihuan murmured, I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't know? Well, you still intend to hide it from me at this time. Do you know that if something really happens to Prince Chen, the whole Duke Xing's mansion may be buried with him?" The third madam was furious and said angrily. She was in poor health, so most of the arrangements were done by Xiao Caihuan. It was not that she wanted to let Xiao Caihuan deal with this matter, but that Xiao Caihuan took the initiative to say that she wanted to learn to be a housekeeper. On the one hand, she could take good care of her health, and on the other hand, she wanted to practice. Thinking that she would enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion in the future, if she could learn to be a housekeeper, her status in Commandery Prince Qing's mansion might be higher, and she might even become Commandery Prince Qing's princess because of Duke Xing's mansion. The third madam let her do it. She asked her and Xiao Wanru to help, but in fact, the focus was on Xiao Caihuan. Now such a big mistake had been made. Others didn't know it, but the third madam knew it. If someone had done something, the first possibility was Xiao Caihuan. Moreover, her expression just now was very abnormal. The reason why the third madam softened and admitted it was also because of Xiao Caihuan. There were no outsiders here, so the third madam should ask clearly. "Mother." "Mother." Xiao Caihuan stammered. "If you don't want to annoy me to death, tell me the truth." The third madam patted the armrest of the chair heavily and said painfully. Her words were so serious that Xiao Caihuan couldn't stand it anymore. She knelt down with a plop and walked a few steps on her knees to the third madam. She put her hands on the third madam's knees and said sadly, "Mother." As soon as she cried, her tears fell uncontrollably again. She cried and said, "Mother, I don't want to enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. If I have to enter a prince's mansion, I would like to enter Prince Chen's mansion and serve Prince Chen with my fifth sister." She had been holding these words in her heart for a period of time. At this time, she said it in front of the third madam. After saying it, she burst into tears and cried uncontrollably. The third madam was stunned and looked at Xiao Caihuan in horror. Her lips trembled twice, and she couldn't breathe. She covered her chest hard. Seeing that the situation was not good, Xiao Caihuan hurriedly stood up, cried and patted the third madam's back, and said anxiously, Mother, don't worry. Calm down first." The third madam finally recovered. When she did, she slapped Xiao Caihuan hard, which made Xiao Caihuan take a few steps back and almost fall. "Mother." Xiao Caihuan looked at the third madam with tears in her eyes. Are you going to annoy me to death? Is it so easy to enter Prince Chen's mansion? Don't you want to enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion? It was your father who went to your second uncle to ask for the marriage. Otherwise, do you think Commandery Prince Qing's mansion would be willing to let you enter? Who would want to marry you when you look like this? Commandery Prince Qing may not be willing to marry you, but Prince Chen will. The third madam was so angry that she almost fainted. She never knew that her daughter had such a delusion, let alone that her daughter intended to make this delusion a reality. Who was Prince Chen? How could he be the same as Commandery Prince Qing? He was the beloved person of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, so how could he be plotted against? Mother. As long as I serve Prince Chen well, he will be willing. Besides, I don't want to be his wife, and fifth sister is his wife. Fifth sister has a good temper and has always been good to me. If the two of us are together, wouldn't it be better? Prince Chen has a noble status, and it's impossible for fifth sister to be his wife. Since there are others, why can't it be me? At least fifth sister and I are of one mind. Xiao Caihuan cried. The third madam took a deep breath, suppressed the blood rolling in her heart, and then asked slowly, when did you have this idea? I saw Prince Chen give fifth sister a betrothal gift. Xiao Caihuan wiped away her tears and told the truth. Since she had told the beginning, the next step was much simpler. You actually liked Prince Chen from that time. Why didn't you tell me? The third madam said exasperatedly. She really wanted to knock her daughter's head open to see what she was thinking. If Prince Chen could have his own way, even if he was weak, he would have been taken away long ago, and Xiao Wanru wouldn't have had a chance. Moreover, Prince Chen gave Xiao Wanru a betrothal gift in person. Although he didn't like Xiao Wanru, it could be seen that he didn't dislike Xiao Wanru, or even liked her a little. Which other woman had such a status? Mother, I dare not say. I really dare not say. Xiao Caihuan cried loudly and could hardly speak clearly. She really didn't dare to say it. She could only secretly please Xiao Wanru and wanted Xiao Wanru to say it. She even thought about promising Xiao Wanru that after they entered Prince Chen's mansion, she would not fight for anything. She just wanted to quietly stay by Prince Chen's side and help Xiao Wanru fight for Prince Chen's favor when she needed help. As a sister and the daughter of the lineal descent, she compromised so much and thought so much for her fifth sister. Xiao Caihuan felt that she was not wrong. But even so, she still didn't dare to tell the third madam. Seeing that her daughter was still so stubborn, the third madam stopped beating around the bush. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said with a cold face, "Now tell me the truth. Who gave you this idea behind the scenes? Who wants to secretly harm our third branch and let us die with you? Is it your fifth sister?" Chapter 855. Speaking of this, the third madam's face darkened. How could her daughter not understand that the most she could do was to please Xiao Wanru? A while ago, she had said that it was strange that Xiao Caihuan would go to the Piaoyuan courtyard whenever she had time. She had wondered why Xiao Caihuan was so close to Xiao Wanru, but she didn't expect that it was because of such a reason. This could explain why Xiao Caihuan always showed weakness to Xiao Wanru. Thinking that her daughter, who was also a charming daughter of legal wife, actually had such a bad idea and tried to please her cousin, the third madam felt both heartache and sadness. If nothing had happened in the imperial palace at that time, how could her daughter want to be someone else's concubine? Even if Xiao Caihuan was the prince's concubine, the third madam was not willing to do so. Her daughter was the daughter of legal wife, so she should be the legal wife, not the concubine who tried to please other women. Mother. Xiao Caihuan murmured. You still don't say it at this time. Do you want to protect that person and let your parents and sisters block the trouble for the person you want to protect? The third madam became more and more angry. Mother, it's not like that. It's not like that. I wanted to tell you about it, but when I came to tell you that day, I met sister-in-law. Xiao Caihuan cried and didn't dare to hide it anymore. She didn't want to say it because she didn't have any evidence. She just said it. After she was ignored by Prince Chen that day, she wanted to tell the third madam and ask the third madam to help her. Unexpectedly, she met a servant girl of Minister Zhao's mansion, or to be more precise, Zhao Shiran's servant girl, who asked her out at night, said that she had something important to discuss with her and said that she could solve the problem she wanted to solve the most at present. Xiao Caihuan was dubious. Later, she thought that Zhao Shiran was about to enter Duke Xing's mansion and become her sister-in-law, so it was impossible for him to harm her. With a dubious attitude, she went out at night. The housekeeper was the third madam, so no one dared to stop Xiao Caihuan from going out. After she met up with Zhao Shiran, the two of them did not talk about anything else. Zhao Shiran even tried to persuade her, saying that he had seen through her thoughts before. She told her not to covet Prince Chen. She said that a man like Prince Chen was not easy to get. There were so many young ladies in the capital, and many of them didn't care about Prince Chen's health. Who could get Prince Chen's attention? Of course, on the other hand, it also meant that Prince Chen's mansion was clean. In the future, Xiao Wanru would be blessed to marry into it. Even if there were one or two more concubines, it would be cleaner and blessed than other mansions. Every mansion had 3 or 4 concubines. They looked beautiful, but in fact, they were suffering inside. Xiao Caihuan already had feelings for Prince Chen. After listening to Zhao Shiran's advice, she became more and more interested in him. As a woman, how could she not want her sweetheart to have no other women by his side? It was impossible to have a princess consort, but it would be great if she was the only one. Therefore, Xiao Caihuan was not persuaded, but her desire was ignited. After that, Zhao Shiran did not ask more about it. Instead, he asked about his marriage. When there was no one else around, Zhao Shiran had always been very graceful. Now that he talked about his marriage, he seemed to be very natural. Knowing that the third madam was in charge of Duke Xing's mansion now, he specially thanked Xiao Caihuan. Moreover, he also told Xiao Caihuan not to have such thoughts. If something really happened in the marriage with Prince Chen, the third madam would be embarrassed. He also said that Prince Chen was not in good health and should not be persuaded to drink. Others might not get drunk, but Prince Chen must get drunk. If something happened at that time, it would be bad for everyone. These words sounded reasonable, and they were indeed from the perspective of the third madam. But in Xiao Caihuan's ears, it became another meaning. Prince Chen could not drink. Others could, but she could not. If Prince Chen was drunk, she could serve him. If something really happened at that time, Prince Chen would have to give her an explanation. After all, she was also the daughter of the lineal descent of Duke Xing's mansion. Moreover, she was only going to take care of Prince Chen. What would happen later was out of her control. Even if Xiao Wanru did not want to agree, she had to agree. With such a beautiful idea, Xiao Caihuan returned to Duke Xing's mansion. That night, she did not sleep well. She tossed and turned, thinking about this matter. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. If she really succeeded, she would become Prince Chen's woman. At least, she would be a concubine. After all, she was right. There was nothing wrong with helping her mother take care of distinguished guests. It was just a freak accident. This was also the reason why she secretly asked the third madam to send the wine. She only said that noble guests should naturally send noble wine, and she did not say that Prince Chen was also here. If she knew that Prince Chen was also here, her mother must have scruples. Everyone knew what Prince Chen was like, so no one dared to send wine at random. After hearing Xiao Caihuan's words, the third madam was so angry that her face turned blue and white. She had been with Madame of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang, for so many years. Although she was a little weaker, she could still turn the tables according to what had happened 3 years ago. It could be seen that she was not a bad person. Hearing Xiao Caihuan's words, how could she not understand what Zhao Shiran meant? She was so angry that she wanted to rush to the bridal chamber and ask Zhao Shiran what she meant. She, a new bride, dared to plot against the third branch. What did she mean? But there was no evidence except for Xiao Caihuan's words. Moreover, every word and sentence she said was comforting words, which seemed to be justifiable. You stupid, why are you so stupid? The third madam stretched out her finger and pointed hard at Xiao Caihuan's forehead, scolding, why do you think she will do it out of kindness? If something really happens, even if Duke Xing's mansion is fine, our third branch must be in trouble. The second branch will not protect us, nor will old madam. Speaking of this, the third madam felt aggrieved. She had been ignored for so many years after marrying into Duke Xing's mansion. Moreover, she had a pair of daughters and had no children, so she became more and more disgraced in front of old madam. It was not easy for her to get to this point and have a little foundation, but such a thing happened because of her daughter. Mother, mother, what should we do now? What should we do? Xiao Caihuan also knew that it was a disaster at this time and said, trembling all over. Did you put something in the wine? The third madam calmed down. It was not the time to blame Zhao Shiran, so she could only force herself to ask. Mother, I didn't do anything. I just asked someone to send wine. I dare not do anything else. Xiao Caihuan cried. Her original intention was to get Prince Chen drunk and then make some trouble with the excuse of visiting him. This matter would be settled. If she really asked her to put something in the wine, she would not dare to do it. After all, there were two other princes. The third madam breathed a sigh of relief. Her daughter was not so stupid. Otherwise, the third branch would definitely not be able to escape this time. Then there was at least room for redemption. The two Wangye won't fight for no reason. They must have been poisoned. Since you didn't do it, it's the best. Zhao Shiran was the one who asked you to do it. If anyone knows about it, it must be Zhao Shiran. But it's useless even if you tell them that it might be Zhao Shiran. The third madam calmly analyzed. Mother, then what should we do? After being frightened, Xiao Caihuan was at a loss. Go to your fifth sister and make it clear. The third madam exhaled heavily and made up her mind. It was impossible for old madam to help her daughter. It was said that she also valued this granddaughter-in-law very much. At this time, she would not listen to anything she said, so it was better not to say anything. At this time, the third madam wished that Zhao Shiran was dead. This woman had just married into the family for a day, and so many things had happened. It was definitely not a good thing. She could not get Zhao Shiran involved in Xiao Caihuan's matter, but she could do other things. The third branch was not so easy to bully. The third madam secretly hated Zhao Shiran. After Xiao Caihuan's matter was settled, she would teach Zhao Shiran a lesson. After all, the eldest lineal grandson was not the heir of Duke Xing's mansion, and it was uncertain who would become the heir of Duke Xing's mansion. At this time, she took on the airs of the future heir of Duke Xing's mansion and intervened in the affairs of the mansion. She was just a new daughter-in-law. Did she really think that she was madam of Duke Xing's mansion? Mother, I don't want to go. I don't know what to say. Xiao Caihuan was ashamed and cried. You don't know what to say, but you know what to do. If you don't say it, wait for the second branch to push the blame on your father and me. At that time, your father and I will take the blame, and there will only be you and your sister left in this mansion. Who else in this mansion will treat you as the master? The third madam had to use a heavy dose of medicine and scolded her sternly. Xiao Caihuan trembled all over, and tears fell from her eyes like rain. She could not bear the consequences and did not dare to bear it. If something really happened to her parents, she could only apologize with her death. At that time, her family would be broken, and there would be no future. Mother. I'll go to fifth sister. Xiao Caihuan had to agree. Go to your fifth sister and tell her the cause and effect of this matter. You should tell her what Zhao Shiran said more clearly. As for your own delusion, you must repent. You can't hide it, and you can't think about Prince Chen in the future. Otherwise, not only Prince Chen will not spare you, but also your fifth sister will not forgive you. The third madam knew better than her daughter that the youngest and the latest girl to enter Duke Xing's mansion was by no means an ordinary girl. If she was really just an ordinary girl from an aristocratic family, she would have been killed by Madam of the Jiang family before she entered the mansion. How could she have entered Duke Xing's mansion? Not only did she enter Duke Xing's mansion, but Madam of the Jiang family was also defeated to such a degree. If it was all an accident, the third madam really did not believe it. She had always wanted to make friends with Xiao Wanru before, and specially sent the things in Infanta Qinghua's dowry to Xiao Wanru. Yes, I will go now. Xiao Caihuan had to agree with tears in her eyes. Chapter 856. Even if she had many romantic feelings, she was scared out of her wits at this time. At this time, Xiao Caihuan also found that she had thought too simply. She thought that as long as she thought so, she would have such a good opportunity to do something. She didn't expect that things would develop to this point, and the third branch might even lose their lives. After the third madam asked her to wipe away her tears, she asked her old maid to take Xiao Caihuan to the Piaoyun courtyard to find Xiao Wanru. In the Piaoyun courtyard, Xiao Wanru frowned slightly and thought about what had happened just now. It was strange, very strange. Why did the Zhao family send the pastry recipes? Moreover, such a big kitchen actually thought that the pastries were very good and didn't raise any objections. It was really strange. Even if there was really something wrong with these pastries, it was her fault. Who would benefit from it? The third madam was doomed to be unable to take care of everything personally because of her health. Which of the unmarried misses in the mansion wanted to intervene in the management of the mansion? Xiao Jia. She didn't look like her. After all, she was a daughter of a concubine, and it was not legitimate, especially when there were so many daughters of lineal descent in the mansion. Xiao Caihuan. Even if she wanted to intervene in her current situation, she couldn't do anything about it. A woman's appearance was damaged, and the most important thing at the moment was to recuperate. How could she have such a big idea? Xiao Kailing was even more unlikely. So who was secretly plotting against her? Could it be Zhao Shiran, the bride who had just married into the mansion? Although Xiao Wanru didn't think it was credible, she thought about it for the time being. It wasn't that she was suspicious. In her last life, she had died so miserably, but she didn't even know who killed her in the end. After her rebirth, if she didn't pay more attention, she might die with a grievance again. Miss, the third miss came crying and said that she wanted to see you. Chu Lu hurried in and reported. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and nodded. Invite her in. Chu Lu left to invite her in. A trace of sadness flashed in Xiao Wanru's eyes. It was very likely that Xiao Caihuan came at this time because of what had happened before. Judging from Xiao Caihuan's behavior today, Xiao Caihuan must have been involved in what had happened in the outer courtyard today. Yu Jie went to the door and lifted the curtain. Xiao Caihuan came in while crying. When she got inside, Yu Jie put down the curtain. Xiao Wanru stood up and said lightly, "Third sister, please sit down." Anyway, Xiao Caihuan was her third cousin. "Fifth sister, please save me, save my mother." Xiao Caihuan fell to her knees. Xiao Wanru dodged it dexterously. She frowned slightly and said unhappily, "Third sister, what do you mean? You're my third sister and the third lady of the public house. How can you kneel before me like this? If others saw this, they would think that I was bullying you. If third sister has something to say, just say it. There's no need to act like this." Xiao Wanru was a little angry and her words were a little harsh. However, Xiao Caihuan also knew that she couldn't provoke Xiao Wanru at this time, so she no longer refused. Chu Lu came over to help her up. After standing up, she wiped her tears and said, "Third sister, I really don't mean any harm. I just asked someone to send some wine that may be intoxicating, and the amount is not much. Generally, others won't get drunk. At most, Prince Chen will get drunk, and he will be fine after a nap. Third sister, you have a grudge against Prince Chen, so you want to hurt him?" Xiao Wanru's voice became cold. No, no. Xiao Caihuan still wanted to struggle. "If not, why did you get Prince Chen drunk?" Xiao Wanru didn't allow her to explain too much and pressed her. I actually have another meaning." Xiao Caihuan stammered. It was difficult for her, an unmarried daughter, to say this kind of thing, especially when Xiao Wanru's two maids were in the room. For a moment, she blushed, feeling ashamed. "What other meaning do you have, third sister? You'd better tell me." I really can't guess what third sister's intention is. If the Empress Dowager in the Imperial Palace knows about it, she may not even have time to reason with you. Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice, her eyes became colder, and her delicate little face was covered with frost. She was several years younger than Xiao Caihuan, but at this time, her momentum made Xiao Caihuan shocked. Her lips trembled twice, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Fifth sister, it's all my fault. I wanted to hurt Prince Chen, but it was not my intention. It was Zhao Shiran who asked me to do so." After that, the wine seemed to have been tampered with. Otherwise, even if the two princes drank all of it, they wouldn't have fought. The third madam had already reminded Xiao Caihuan. In addition to Xiao Wanru's warning just now, Xiao Caihuan didn't dare to hide anything. She ignored her shame and told everything. First sister-in-law. Xiao Wanru's eyes narrowed slightly, fell on Xiao Caihuan, and said in an ambiguous tone. Thinking that Xiao Wanru didn't believe her, Xiao Caihuan was anxious and hurriedly said, "It's true. The last time Prince Chen came to our mansion, old Madam of Minister Zhao's mansion and Zhao Shiran were also there. Do you remember?" At this time, Xiao Caihuan also hated Zhao Shiran deeply. The third madam's words made her realize that she might have really fallen into Zhao Shiran's trap. At this time, of course, she said everything. For fear that Xiao Wanru wouldn't believe her, she deliberately told the whole story, including the correct time and address. After she finished speaking, Xiao Wanru nodded after thinking for a moment, agreeing with Xiao Caihuan's point of view. Xiao Caihuan breathed a sigh of relief, but Xiao Wanru's next words immediately made her feel nervous again. Third sister, even if I can understand it, others must think that it's third sister or third aunt's idea. If others know that third sister has such an idea, I'm afraid that third sister will not be able to get married in the future. Not only third sister, but also fourth sister. Third aunt will not have a good ending with grandma. Xiao Wanru said calmly. As soon as she said this, Xiao Caihuan's body went limp and her face was as pale as snow. This was what she was most afraid of. This was also the reason why she didn't dare to accuse Zhao Shiran without evidence. Even if Zhao Shiran told her, it would not be a big deal. Her words sounded like persuasion. What's more, she couldn't tell Xiao Caihuan about her brother-in-law. She couldn't even tell her biological grandma, because Xiao Caihuan had always known her grandma's partiality. Her mother might even be sent out to recuperate because of her poor upbringing. After all, Xiao Caihuan was not a scheming person. At this time, she was already flustered. She trembled and asked Xiao Wanru for advice. "Fifth sister, what should we do now?" What should we do? She had no idea now. She just wanted to get away with her father, mother, and their family. Being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. It was the same for Prince Chen. She would rather marry into an ordinary family and seek a lifetime of peace. At this time, it was fake to have too many ideas. She just wanted to live in peace. Third sister, you really didn't ask someone to put something else in the wine? Xiao Wanru asked. Someone must have done something in it. Xiao Caihuan was the cause, but who else was it? Zhao Shiran? This was unlikely. Even if Zhao Shiran could arrange a few servants in the mansion, it was impossible for him to arrange such a person. Since Xiao Caihuan had ulterior motives, the person who sent the wine was either her confidant or the third madam's confidant. Such a confidant was basically impossible to be bribed by Zhao Shiran. I really didn't. Fifth sister, although I was wishful thinking, I didn't dare to really put anything in it. Prince Chen is well known for his poor health. If he really made a big deal because of something in it, the whole Duke Xing's mansion might be buried with him. I didn't dare to do it even if I thought about it. Xiao Caihuan wiped her tears and shook her head. She really didn't dare to do such a thing. She just hoped that Prince Chen could be helped to have a rest after he got drunk. As for other things, she really didn't think about anything else. After they got drunk, they would lie together and tear their clothes to pieces, and then let others see it. Anyway, she was just a concubine, so it didn't matter if her reputation was slightly damaged. Moreover, the other party was the descendant of the emperor. Seeing Xiao Caihuan shake her head and refuse, Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice to hide the deep doubt in her eyes. It was certain that someone had done something to it. If it wasn't someone from the mansion, then there was another possibility. Fifth sister, please help me. Please tell Prince Qin about it. I won't dare to do it again. I won't do it again. Xiao Caihuan begged. Third sister, I don't know how to deal with it until now. I haven't gone out since I returned to the Piaoyun courtyard, so I don't know what grandma and second uncle think. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said. She couldn't take charge of this matter. She was just the unmarried fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion and didn't have so much power. Then what should I do? I really didn't do it on purpose, and I didn't do anything else. Second uncle wants to send all the servants to the palace and let the emperor's servants interrogate them. Fifth sister, what should I do? What should I do? Xiao Caihuan looked at Xiao Wanru in despair and said. Send all of them to the palace and let the emperor deal with them. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Yes, he said that all of them will be sent to the palace. Xiao Caihuan said with a cry. She was at a loss and panicked now, only hoping that Xiao Wanru could reach out and help her. Third sister, the reason why you sent the wine should be reasonable. Is there anything missing? Xiao Wanru asked as usual. It's very reasonable. There's nothing missing. It's just that my mother sent good wine to the three princes. There's nothing else. Even if it's my mother's servant who sent the wine, she thinks that my mother wants to please the three princes. Xiao Caihuan was still very clear at this time. She thought while crying. In this case, third sister, you don't have to panic. You don't know this matter, and neither does third aunt. Third aunt is in charge of the affairs of the backyard. It's very possible that some servants are loyal to the old master. Xiao Wanru reminded Xiao Caihuan meaningfully. The so-called old master, of course, referred to the second branch's Madam of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang. Of course, now Madame Jiang was not here, so it was unlikely to be Madame Jiang. Then who else in the second branch could be considered the old master? Who wanted to take away the right to be the housekeeper? Why was a newly married woman so aggressive? This was what Xiao Wanru couldn't figure out at the moment. Even if she wanted to seize power, it was not the right time. Was Zhao Shiran so eager to take charge of the backyard? Chapter 857. Xiao Caihuan's eyes suddenly widened. She opened her mouth but didn't make a sound, and resentment flashed across her eyes. Madame Jiang was not in the mansion, nor was Xiao Yanru. If there was anyone else who might intervene here, it would be the new bride of the mansion. The servants in the mansion used to follow Madame Jiang, the second wife. Now that Madame Jiang was not here, it was Zhao Shiran who was most likely to make the servants obey her orders. She remembered that it was impossible for her to have such an idea before. It was only after Zhao Shiran persuaded her that she came up with this idea. Xiao Caihuan was not hopelessly stupid. She was so angry that her face turned pale. Third sister, there has to be an end to this matter. I'm afraid that the mansion wants to push third aunt away now. If you want to save yourself, you have to do it before someone from the imperial palace gives the order. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said softly. Xiao Caihuan had seen the scene in her grandmother's room just now and also saw her grandmother and her second uncle's coercion of her mother, which was caused by her. For a moment, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. It was all her mother's fault. She couldn't let her mother be pushed out to take the blame. The cause of this matter was clearly the second branch. Why did they push the blame to her? Thinking that her mother's health was harmed because of her second aunt, she felt a burning pain in her heart. Her mother had asked her to pay attention to the people in the second branch, saying that they were all very shrewd and asking her not to have too much contact with them. However, she was so careless that she had been deceived by Zhao Shiran. The more she thought about it, the more resentful and annoyed she became. She couldn't swallow it no matter what. She gritted her teeth and turned to leave. She couldn't help letting others push the blame to her mother. Even if she couldn't tell the whole story, she could bring it to Zhao Shiran. After all, this was Duke Xing's mansion, not Minister Zhao's mansion. It would not be so easy for Zhao Shiran to seize power after entering the mansion. Seeing Xiao Caihuan leave with a livid face, Yu Jie asked, "Miss, where are you going, third miss?" Xiao Wanru glanced out of the window coldly and saw Xiao Caihuan walking away quickly. She raised the corners of her mouth silently and said, "Some people always think that they are very smart and think that they can play others in the palm of their hands. In fact, others are not so stupid. When they fight to the death, they may not have the upper hand." Her words were vague, so Yu Jie didn't understand. She blinked her eyes and thought it was better to ask some questions that were not so vague. "Did third miss go to trouble second grandma?" Xiao Wanru nodded. "Actually, third miss, you don't have any evidence. Moreover, I don't think second grandma is so stupid as to really attack the two princes. This kind of thing will be a big deal." Yu Jie subconsciously muttered to herself. "She really didn't do it," Xiao Wanru said lightly. She had an answer in her heart. Although it had not been confirmed, it should be the answer. However, although she didn't do it, Zhao Shiran was obviously stirring up trouble. Whether it was the previous pastry incident or Xiao Caihuan's incident, since he had stretched out his hand, he couldn't take it back. No evidence. A newcomer who had just entered the mansion. Sometimes, not everything needed evidence. It was not so difficult for all the people to agree with each other. Xiao Caihuan was actually a double-edged sword, especially at this moment, when Xiao Caihuan still wanted to protect herself. Zhao Shiran had been sitting on the bed for a long time. After waiting for so long, Xiao Hua and didn't come back. She couldn't help but frown tightly and felt very uneasy. "Miss, let me go to inquire about it." Qiu Yu, the maid who came with her, also felt uneasy. "No, wait. We have just arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, so we can't act rashly." Zhao Shiran shook her head and slowly relaxed her frown. She was just a newlywed. Even if there was something, she didn't need to care about it. Nothing had anything to do with her. Whether it was the third branch or the second branch, it must be her who had just entered the mansion as a newlywed, so it was impossible for her to have anything to do with it. "Miss, let me go to the door to have a look." Another maid, Qiu Yan, suggested. This time, Zhao Shiran didn't refuse and nodded. When Qiu Yan walked to the door and went out, she saw Xiao Caihuan rushing into the yard angrily. She hurriedly stepped aside and saluted, "Third miss." Xiao Caihuan was here to make trouble now. She came over, pushed Qiu Yan away, and strode inside. The pearl curtain hanging at the door was pulled down by her, and the pearls that had been hanging on it slid down one by one and fell to the ground. Zhao Shiran stood up from the bed and looked at Xiao Caihuan, who had rushed in, with a displeased face. She said in a soft voice, "Third sister, what do you mean?" "What do I mean?" "Sister-in-law, you are really good at pretending. You have only been in the mansion for one day, but you have seduced second aunt's former confidants and made them listen to you. You even asked them to drug the two princes' wine, so that mother would be reprimanded and take away mother's right to manage the family." Xiao Caihuan shouted angrily, trembling with anger. Originally, 30% of what she said was true, and 70% was what she came up with. But when she said it, she found that it couldn't be true. Otherwise, Zhao Shiran wouldn't have picked her to do it. Zhao Shiran was the one who benefited the most from this matter. "What are you talking about, third sister?" Zhao Shiran's face darkened and became cold. "Don't you understand what I'm talking about? Don't you always like to stir up trouble behind people's backs? You said that she was a talented woman and that she was no match for men. If it's about viciousness, men are indeed no match for her. I thought that eldest brother married a good woman, but now it seems that she is a second aunt." Xiao Caihuan was so angry that she pointed at Zhao Shiran and shouted abuse. "Third sister, I don't know what you're talking about, but you shouldn't be disrespectful to your elders." Zhao Shiran's face became colder and colder, but his words were very orderly. He didn't talk about his grievances, but only talked about Xiao Caihuan's belittling of Madame of Jiang. Don't use second aunt as an example. What did second aunt do to end up like this? Others might not know, but how could our manor not know? There's no need for you to pretend to be kind here. But the relationship between eldest sister-in-law and second aunt is really good. She has taken over all second aunt's servants in the mansion and is ready to make waves in Duke Xing's mansion. Xiao Caihuan didn't care at all and still said angrily. Her voice was sharp and angry, and all the servants in the yard heard it. Someone had already seen that the situation was not right and hurriedly reported it to old madam. It seemed that something was going to happen in the bridal chamber. Third sister, why do you have to slander the elders? Even if the elders are wrong, it's not something that we juniors should talk about. Zhao Shiran said coldly. Xiao Caihuan couldn't defeat Zhao Shiran in an argument. Seeing her beautifully dressed face, she suddenly became angry and waved her hand to slap her. How could Zhao Shiran let her slap her? She took a step back. Qiu Yu hurriedly stepped forward to stop Xiao Caihuan. Third miss, our master has just married into Duke Xing's mansion. You are so rude and unreasonable. Is it because you don't want our master to marry into Duke Xing's mansion? If so, please go and make it clear to old madam of your mansion that our master doesn't have to marry your first young master. This marriage was indeed proposed by Duke Xing's mansion, and it had been proposed for so many years. It could be said that Duke Xing's mansion had begged for a daughter-in-law. How could the servants of Minister Zhao's mansion say such words? Seeing that she couldn't beat Zhao Shiran and that Zhao Shiran's servant girl dared to say such words, Xiao Caihuan was so angry that her eyes widened and her face turned blue and white. No matter in words or other things, she couldn't defeat Zhao Shiran in an argument, so she was led astray by a few words. Knowing that if she went on like this, it would be even more difficult to explain, Xiao Caihuan was so angry that she reached out to pick up a pair of red candles beside her and smashed them to the ground. Her mother, herself, and even the whole third branch were going to be destroyed by this woman. How could Xiao Caihuan care about anything at this time? Third miss, how dare you? Zhao Shiran's face also changed greatly. Although she was not very willing to marry into Duke Xing's mansion, she couldn't let Xiao Caihuan smash the candles, which was extremely inauspicious for a marriage. You dare to hurt us, so why wouldn't I dare? Zhao Shiran, do you want to hurt the two princes or our third branch? Just tell me. There is no one else in this room. They are either your servant girl or my servant girl. Anyway, their words can't help anyone. Just tell me the truth. Xiao Caihuan screamed, looked at the candles on the ground, and stamped on them hard. The originally red dragon and phoenix candles were immediately broken by her, and the sparks were also extinguished. In the bridal chamber, the candles could not be extinguished at this time. The faces of the two dowry maids changed greatly when they saw this. Zhao Shiran was so angry that his voice trembled. Third Miss Xiao, what do you mean? I've been sitting in this room without even going out. What have I done to make Third Miss Xiao so angry? How dare you curse me here? Well. If Third Miss Xiao doesn't give me a reason today, I'll go back to Zhao's mansion immediately and forget about the marriage. No one could bear such a thing as soon as they entered the mansion. Zhao Shiran felt that he was a cultured person, but he was still trembling with anger at Xiao Caihuan's rudeness. The miss of Duke Xing's mansion was really unruly. How dare she do such a thing? It was simply unheard of. I don't mean anything. I just want to ask you why you want to hurt the two princes like this. Xiao Caihuan, who had suffered a loss in words just now, was also smart at this time. She no longer talked about the immediate matter and directly brought up the biggest disaster. What nonsense are you talking about? The half-closed door of the room was pushed open heavily, and the two people in the room looked back at the same time. When they saw a group of people appearing at the door, they took a step back at the same time. Such a big movement, as expected, alarmed old madam. Seeing the beads rolling on the ground and Xiao Caihuan's aggressive look, old madam's face turned pale with anger. Chapter 858. The third miss has been locked up. It was late when the Piaoyun courtyard got the news. Xiao Wanru didn't deliberately ask someone to inquire about it, so she got the news much later. Yes, she is also locked up in the small temple at the back with the second miss as her companion. I heard that old madam even asked someone to beat the third miss before locking her up. After the third madam heard the news, she came to beg old madam, but old madam didn't agree. After that, she fainted not long after kneeling in old madam's courtyard. Nanny Yu sorted out the news she got and reported. This matter became a little bigger, and the whole mansion knew about it. Later, although old madam issued a gag order, it was too late. Those who should know had already known. Even some guests who stayed in the front yard were talking about it. The servants stopped talking, but the guests were still talking about it. For a time, rumors spread everywhere. Nanny Yu just went to the front yard. She didn't deliberately inquire about it, but just listened for a while and got the news she wanted. "Where's third uncle?" Xiao Wanru asked calmly. She had underestimated her third uncle in the past. He could force her second uncle to give up Xiao Jia's marriage. Whether it was her second uncle's other plan or not, it showed that her third uncle also had something that her second uncle was afraid of. The third master heard that the third madam fainted. After making a scene, he took the third madam back, but the third miss was still locked up. Nanny Yu thought for a while and said, "Who is hosting the banquet outside now?" Xiao Wanru asked again. "The duke is hosting the banquet outside, and old madam is hosting inside, but..." Nanny Yu hesitated when she said this. "What's wrong?" Xiao Wanru looked up at Nanny Yu. "I heard that the new grandma is going back to the mansion." Nanny Yu had never heard of such a thing. A newly married woman wanted to leave after the wedding ceremony. It was better not to tell this kind of thing to an unmarried Mississippi. But after thinking about it, Nanny Yu still told the truth. Her miss was not an ordinary master. "Has she gone back?" Xiao Wanru was not surprised by this. Xiao Caihuan made a scene in the bridal chamber and blamed everything on Zhao Shiran. If Zhao Shiran had no reaction and kept it to herself, she would not be the Zhao Shiran she had imagined. Of course old madam won't let her go back. "I heard that she even asked someone to guard the bridal chamber," Nanny Yu said. A smile flashed across Xiao Wanru's face. After all, this was Duke Xing's mansion. Old madam couldn't let such a scandal happen in Duke Xing's mansion. Even if there were rumors outside now, it was better than Zhao Shiran really going back. Old madam had always valued the interests of Duke Xing's mansion above everything else. Zhao Shiran didn't really want to make trouble and just wanted to express her grievance. But in old madam's eyes, it was one disaster after another. Even though she used to like Zhao Shiran very much, she would definitely change her mind this time. "Is there any news from the palace?" After asking about the matters in the mansion, Xiao Wanru asked again. This old servant hasn't. Just as Nanny Yu was about to say that she hadn't heard of it, she suddenly saw Chu Lu rushing in. "Miss, old madam asked you to go out with her. She said that there is an imperial decree." Chu Lu wiped the hot sweat from running out and said anxiously. Xiao Wanru nodded, stood up, and walked out with Chu Lu. Calculating the time, the imperial decree should be issued soon. It was impossible to delay until tomorrow. After such a big thing had happened, if the imperial palace still hadn't reacted, it would be too slow. In the hall, all the masters of Duke Xing's mansion had arrived, including Xiao Caihuan, who had just been beaten and locked in the temple, and Zhao Shiran, who was grounded in the bridal chamber. Xiao Wanru came early, and the third madam was the last to come. The third madam, whose face was pale without a trace of blood, was tottering. She held Xiao Keiling's hand on one hand and the third master of Duke Xing's mansion on the other. She swayed with every step, and it was obvious that she was not in a good state. Seeing that everyone was here, the eunuch who delivered the decree announced the emperor's decree. It said that the two princes' wine had been drugged, so that the two princes had lost their manners. Duke Xing's mansion was asked to find out who did it. Moreover, Duke Xing and old madam were severely reprimanded for not managing their own mansion's affairs well. Duke Xing's mansion was fined 1 year's salary, and Duke Xing's mansion was downgraded to Marquis Xing's mansion. Hearing this decree, old madam's legs went soft, and she collapsed to the ground. She rolled her eyes and fainted directly. The third madam tried her best to support old madam, but she was pulled to the ground with her. Xiao Jing stared blankly. He knew that this matter would definitely not end well. Either of the two princes was the most favored prince of the emperor. With the emperor's mind, if there was no accident, the future emperor would be one of the two princes. But no matter what, he did not expect that the emperor would directly revoke the title of Duke Xing's mansion. Changing the title of Duke Xing's mansion to that of Marquis Xing's mansion could only be done in a mansion that had committed a serious crime. Of course, it could also be seen that Duke Xing's mansion was not favored by the emperor now. Among the aristocratic families in the capital city, Duke Xing's mansion had always been known to be favored by the emperor. Both the old Duke Xing and the former heir of Duke Xing were favored by the emperor, and Duke Xing's mansion had been thriving. According to this trend, everyone could see that Duke Xing's mansion was very prosperous. Duke Xing. Oh, no, Marquis Xing, please accept the decree. After the eunuch finished announcing the decree, he raised his voice and said in a sharp voice, which almost sounded like sarcasm in Xiao Jing's ears. I accept the decree. He lowered his head, forced himself to suppress the trembling in his heart, and said respectfully. Marquis, what's going on in your mansion? Several princes came to congratulate you, but such a thing happened. It's really... The eunuch shook his head and looked very speechless. He was indeed speechless about this matter. Nothing happened to others, but it was the two princes who had an accident. Moreover, they lost their manners and fought with each other. Even though they could not find out anything now, and this matter was related to Duke Xing's mansion, it was really too heavy to directly demote Marquis Xing's mansion. However, people with discerning eyes had seen that now Duke Xing's mansion was becoming less and less valued by the emperor. Previously, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion had an accident in the palace, and there was a faint rumor that it caused the two princes to fight with each other. Could it be that this was a continuation of the original matter? If this was the case, Marquis Xing should be punished indeed. He made the two princes lose face again and again, and he also disgraced the entire royal family. From this point of view, the emperor's punishment was not excessive. The royal family's face could not be disgraced by anyone. Eunuch, can I ask you, how to deal with this matter next? Xiao Jing personally pulled up the jade pendant hanging on his waist, handed it to the eunuch who delivered the decree, and said with a flattering smile. In fact, this matter was not over yet. Marquis Xing, I really don't know about this matter, but, several princes were almost killed this time. The Empress Dowager and the Empress are very angry. The eunuch took the jade pendant, and the smile on his face was much more real, like a flower. Eunuch, what do you mean? Seeing that the eunuch was easy to talk to, Xiao Jing pulled the eunuch aside to talk. He was still at a loss. There has to be an explanation for this matter. The eunuch said with a smile. Tell me about it. Xiao Jing lowered his voice and asked. He didn't even look at the ladies who were in a mess. This kind of thing always happens in your manor. The eunuch said meaningfully. He rolled his eyes, but there were some things that he couldn't say too clearly. The emperor is very angry and is still investigating this matter. Eunuch, our mansion has arrested all the servants who sent the wine and dishes at that time. Can you take them to the palace? No matter who committed the crime, I will not cover it up. Now all the people who have been in contact with them are here. No one is missing, and no one is injured. Xiao Jing handed over another banknote. This was his way of expressing his innocence. He did not lack a single person, nor did he lack a single person. He sent all of them to the palace and did not interrogate them. He did this to show that he had a clear conscience and did not do anything. He hoped that the emperor would understand his innocence and his intentions. The eunuch understood his intention. Moreover, he came here today to take them away. Even if Marquis Xing wanted to interrogate them himself, the emperor would not agree. Marquis Xing was smart. He smiled more brightly and nodded repeatedly. The banknote in his hand slipped into his sleeve skillfully. The eunuch raised his voice and said, "Okay, then I'll take him away for you, Marquis." With a wave of his hand, several guards came in from outside the hall. Xiao Jing hurriedly asked his manservant to take the guards away. They had already been isolated and locked away. The eunuch watched the guards take them away with a smile and then said goodbye to Xiao Jing. His attitude was much more amiable than when he came. It could be seen that Xiao Jing was really innocent this time. He didn't know whether the people of Duke Xing's mansion had done something wrong or someone else had interfered. The original duke could only admit that he was unlucky. Xiao Wanru watched this farce extremely calmly. She also saw the servants hugging old madam and shouting in panic one after another, as if old madam was really dying. In addition to the servant girls and old maids of old madam, the servant girls and old maids of third madam also did not show any weakness. They kept shouting, "Third madam, wake up." For a moment, the hall was filled with cries and miserable cries. The womenfolk staggered as if the entire Duke Xing's mansion had been searched. Xiao Wanru closed her eyes slightly, and her long eyelashes fluttered together. She tilted her head and lay on Chu Li's shoulder. "Miss, fifth miss." Chu Lu understood and hurriedly stuttered, looking like she was frightened and at a loss for what to do. Old madam and third madam had fainted for a while, and the servants of both sides had almost stopped crying. Chu Li's voice startled everyone. Of course, the most important thing was that Xiao Wanru's identity was different now. If she was just an ordinary miss of Marquis Xing's mansion, no one would pay attention to her at this time. What's going on? Xiao Jing had just sent the eunuch away. Hearing this, he hurried over and asked. Our miss was fine just now, but suddenly fainted. Chu Li's face was pale and full of anxiety. Why did she suddenly faint? Xiao Jing looked at Xiao Wanru's lowered face suspiciously. If she had fainted because of the shock like old madam, it had been a long time. Her reaction was too slow. Chapter 859. I don't know. My miss was fine just now, but suddenly. Chu Lu patted Xiao Wanru's back and said in a low voice. Does my miss have any unmentionable disease? Xiao Jing said impatiently. At this time, he was full of thoughts and didn't want to hear the crying in the living room at all. He felt inexplicably annoyed. In order to prove his innocence, he sent her out, but he didn't feel confident. He could guarantee that he didn't do it, but what about others? My miss doesn't have any unmentionable disease, but she is in poor health. When she was in the Yuhui nunnery, she had to recuperate from time to time. Chu Lu felt wronged and wiped her face with a handkerchief. Take your miss away. Xiao Jing waved his hand impatiently, turned around and strode away. He really didn't want to care about the backyard anymore. What happened today was so unexpected that he couldn't recover for a while and didn't have the mood to care about it. Father. Xiao Hua and said. Come with me. Xiao Jing ordered. Father, I. Xiao Hua and looked at Zhao Shiran beside him. He stopped Xiao Jing because he wanted to go back with Zhao Shiran first. Come here first. Xiao Jing ignored his childish thoughts and looked at Zhao Shiran, who was standing aside with his eyes lowered. He frowned unhappily and then turned around and strode away. What Xiao Caihuan did was wrong, but if there was nothing wrong in Zhao's mansion, Xiao Caihuan wouldn't have gone crazy and made such a scene. He couldn't find out anything now, but in general, this new daughter-in-law might have something wrong. If it was really related to Zhao's mansion, this daughter-in-law was really unlucky and not a good thing. In fact, it was Madame Jiang who wanted to marry into Minister Zhao's mansion the most. He had thought that this daughter-in-law was reliable, but now it seemed that she didn't know what to do. If she hadn't been brought into Marquis Xing's mansion, Xiao Jing would have sent her back. He couldn't bear to see his son still being jealous at this time. Yes. Xiao Hua and didn't dare to refuse and could only leave with Xiao Jing. Miss. The servant girl beside Zhao Shiran called her softly. At this time, Zhao Shiran's expression had already calmed down. She, who was wearing a bright red dress, stood alone at the side, looking a little more miserable. Looking up at Xiao Hua's back in the messy hall, Zhao Shiran walked towards Madame Dowager. Among the people who stayed, the third branch had the most people. At this time, they all went to see the third madam. The old madam seemed to be much weaker because there was no master to serve her. When Zhao Shiran came over, the servants immediately made way for him. Zhao Shiran walked up to old madam, took old madam from Nanny Yu's hands, looked at old madam's pale face, stretched out his hand to hold old madam's hanging hand, and skillfully pinched old madam's hand between the thumb and index finger. Old madam let out a low cry and slowly woke up. Old madam. Zhao Shiran looked at old madam with tears in her eyes and said softly. Although she looked aggrieved, she looked very calm and didn't want to make a fuss. This made old madam, who had just woken up, feel a little better and gradually wake up. There were still the panicked voices of the maids and old maids, mixed with the crying voices of Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling. Old madam immediately recalled the situation just now, and she was so angry that her eyebrows and eyes immediately straightened. She stood up with the help of Nanny Yu and Zhao Shiran, looked at the messy hall, and shouted angrily, "Shut up!" As soon as they heard old madam's rebuke, the servants of the third branch immediately didn't dare to make a sound. Mother. The third master was displeased and wanted to say that the third madam was still unconscious. Get out of here. Don't make trouble here. If it weren't for them, such a thing would not have happened. Old madam pointed at the people of the third branch with disgust, including the third madam, Xiao Caihuan, and Xiao Keiling. Mother, how can you? The third master was very unconvinced. Get out of here. Do you want to collect the corpses here? Old madam was full of anger at this time and suddenly blurted out, when the emperor finds out that this matter has something to do with them, you can't escape. Thinking of the people taken away by the guards just now, the third master also panicked. Although he was not promising, he still held an idle position. If he was really implicated, not to mention losing his idle position, he was afraid that even his life would be in danger. Go back. The third master was not in the mood to coax the third madam, so he waved his hand and said angrily. Seeing that the crowd helped the third madam away, the third master also followed them and left. Xiao Wanru also woke up at this time. She stood aside with Chu Li's help and quietly watched the farce in front of her. She also saw the third madam's slightly trembling eyes. Obviously, the third madam should have woken up and didn't wake up to avoid responsibility. This time, old madam really hated the third madam to the extreme. Grandma. Seeing that almost all the people in the hall had left, Zhao Shiran said again. Old madam looked her up and down. Seeing that her behavior was still gentle, she snorted coldly and said rudely, Does your Zhao's mansion have anything to do with what happened today? Her favorite granddaughter was so gentle, and she also liked her very much. However, as soon as she entered the imperial palace, she ended up like this. Old madam was angry at the thought of it. Now seeing Zhao Shiran's similar appearance, she inexplicably felt that she must have other intentions, so her words were extremely unpleasant. Zhao Shiran was still a newcomer, so how could she stand these words? Tears immediately came down on her face, and she cried with tears, Old madam, the Zhao's mansion will never intervene in this matter. If you don't believe it, you can send someone to investigate it. Investigate Minister Zhao's mansion? Especially at this time, old madam snorted coldly in her heart and became more and more unhappy. It's better not to intervene. The emperor has taken all the people away. What will be said next is not up to our mansion. The sarcasm in her words was very obvious. Zhao Shiran's face turned red, and she looked at old madam with shame. She pointed at her sleeve and left, but there was nothing she could do. After calming down, Zhao Shiran turned to Xiao Wanru, who was the only one still here. Fifth sister, first sister-in-law, I'm not feeling well, so I can't accompany you. Xiao Wanru said weakly. She did look listless. After such a thing happened in the mansion, coupled with the noise just now, no one was in the mood to talk about it. It was reasonable for Xiao Wanru to say so. After bowing to Zhao Shiran, Xiao Wanru staggered away with Chu Li's shoulder. Before figuring out Zhao Shiran's purpose, she would not be too close to Zhao Shiran. Whether it was Zhao Shiran who did it today or Minister Zhao's mansion behind Zhao Shiran who did it, it now fell on Zhao Shiran's head. In fact, Zhao Shiran would not be wronged too much. Judging from Zhao Shiran's appearance, she did not look like an ordinary bride. After marrying into Marquis Xing's mansion, she was not as happy as others imagined. It even made people feel that she was actually not very happy in her heart. As for some small tricks, she must have done something. However, since she was unwilling, why did she marry into Marquis Xing's mansion in such a hurry and even seem to solve the problems of Marquis Xing's mansion? She was going to get married in a month. If there was a serious manager in the mansion, it would be much better. At this time, Zhao Shiran, who was married into the mansion, would definitely be in charge of the affairs of the backyard. After all, old madam had always disliked the third madam, so she had no choice but to let the third madam take charge. In this case, a new question arose. Why was Zhao Shiran in such a hurry? Originally, the responsibility of this matter would fall on her head. Was she in a hurry to lose power? Seeing that all the people of Marquis Xing's mansion had left, leaving only Zhao Shiran and her two dowry maids, who did not even have anyone to lead the way for her, the two maids were extremely angry. Miss, they have gone too far. Today is your wedding day, Qiu Yu said angrily. Qiu Yan was also very angry. She stared at Xiao Wanru's back and said with hatred, they said that she has a good character and even the emperor praised her. Look at what they have done. How dare they leave you here alone, miss? The more the two maids thought about it, the angrier they became. When their spoiled miss was in the minister's mansion, she had always been the apple of the minister's and old madam's eyes. How could she be looked down upon by the people of Marquis Xing's mansion now? What happened in the mansion had nothing to do with Mississippi Miss had been in the bridal chamber all the time. The people of Marquis Xing's mansion were really unreasonable. Miss. Qiu Yu was about to speak again, but was stopped by Zhao Shiran, who waved her hand and said, don't talk nonsense. Fifth sister is the future Princess Chen. How can others talk about her at will? Let's go. As he said, he walked out calmly, as if he had suppressed all the grievances just now. He had suffered so much on his wedding day, but he didn't complain at all. He did have the demeanor of a big family. Seeing that their miss did not say anything, the two maids could only bear it at this time, no matter how angry they were. They followed Zhao Shiran to the bridal chamber with a straight face. Fortunately, they had come to the yard of the bridal chamber several times in the past to deliver some decorations. At this time, they could find the place without the guidance of the people of Marquis Xing's mansion. After they left, Xiao Wanru's figure flashed out from the corner of the wall. She looked at Zhao Shiran's back thoughtfully with her watery eyes. He was still able to keep his composure at this time. Just for this, Xiao Wanru had to think highly of Zhao Shiran. After she married into the mansion, almost all the elders didn't like her, and it even caused a dispute between the second branch and the third branch, which even caused the emperor to intervene. Normal women would either panic or cry helplessly, but Zhao Shiran was still so calm. Go and check whether her two maids have done anything after she entered the mansion today. Or have they seen someone in our mansion and talked to each other in private? Xiao Wanru said softly. Judging from Zhao Shiran's appearance, this matter should not be directly related to her, so it could only be related to her maids. She wanted to see what the new sister-in-law of the mansion intended to do. She was watertight and calm. Chapter 860. Because of the conflict between the two princes, Zhao Shiran's wedding night was destined to be a sleepless night. In the morning, she saw Xiao Huan, who was exhausted. He had been discussing with Xiao Jing in the study until now. When he returned to the room and saw Zhao Shiran still sitting on the bed, he felt very guilty. Shiran, I'm sorry. I can't leave now. Why are you still awake? Didn't I ask someone to tell you to sleep first? Xiao Huan couldn't leave now, but he remembered Zhao Shiran, so he asked his manservant to inform her. It's okay. I'm actually not very sleepy. Zhao Shiran said softly, with a gentle smile on her face. But the smile looked forced, and it could be seen that she was also very tired. Xiao Huan couldn't help feeling sorry for her. He looked out of the window and held Zhao Shiran's hand, saying, "It's still early. Let's sleep for a while and then go to meet our relatives." Zhao Shiran nodded gently and helped Xiao Huan take off his outer clothes. They lay down and rested for about 2 hours before getting up. When they finished cleaning and went to the living room of the main room, they only saw Xiao Jing, the third master, and his sisters in the flower hall. It was said that Madame Dowager and Madame Dowager were bedridden and couldn't come to meet their relatives. Although it was just a ceremony, it was a big event for the newlyweds to get the approval of their husbands' families. Madame Dowager rejected the ceremony with the excuse of being bedridden, which was a slap in the face to the newlyweds. It might even make people think that Madame Dowager didn't intend to recognize the newlyweds. Any newlyweds would feel aggrieved if the elders in the mansion didn't even show up to meet their relatives, not to mention that they had stayed alone for a whole night last night. Xiao Huan looked at his wife with a gentle expression. He quietly reached out his hand to comfort her. He was filled with guilt towards Zhao Shiran. Zhao Shiran raised her head and smiled at Xiao Huan. She looked aggrieved but not resentful, which made Xiao Huan's heart soften. It had nothing to do with Shiran. Why did grandma and father insist that it was related to the Zhao mansion? The Zhao mansion was his in-laws. Why didn't they want him to live well? He had tried to explain this to his father last night, but his father just couldn't understand. Thinking of this, Xiao Huan felt a headache coming on. He liked Zhao Shiran, and it was also Zhao Shiran that he fell in love with at first sight. They had been involved for so long, and now it could be said that he had gotten the beauty he wished for, but he did not expect to cause so many problems. The woman he admired was actually suspected by his father and grandmother. She had clearly suffered so many grievances, but she did not complain to him at all. She even comforted him that she was fine. How could he be fine? Things had already gotten to this point. Xiao Huan thought to himself that no matter what the elders in the mansion thought of Zhao Shiran, he would definitely treat her well and not let her suffer too much. Without old madam and the third madam, plus what had happened yesterday, Duke Xing's mansion had become Marquis Xing's mansion. Everyone was unhappy. The original jubilant banquet became silent and serious. No one was in the mood to smile. Not to mention Xiao Jing, who looked worried. Even the unmarried misses didn't smile at all. When they received the gifts from Zhao Shiran, they all bent their knees to show their gratitude. Then they stepped aside after showing their gratitude. Nanny Yu appeared at the door. After coming in, she handed the cards in her hand to Xiao Jing and said, Marquis, these are the cards that old madam asked me to send. Let the new madam take charge of the affairs. The third madam can't afford it now. In fact, this was something that could not be helped. There was no official supervisor in the inner courtyard of the mansion. When the third madam took charge of the affairs, she knew that it was only temporary. She did not expect that such a thing would happen now. The third madam had no intention of taking over the affairs. The next thing was Xiao Wanru's marriage, so there was no room for mistakes. Originally, the intention of the mansion was to wait for Zhao Shiran to take charge of the affairs after she married into the mansion. With her help, it would be easier for the third madam, and she could also learn from her. But now they directly sent the cards to Zhao Shiran, which meant that all the affairs were thrown to Zhao Shiran. Father, it was originally third aunt who took charge of the affairs. It is not appropriate for Zhao Shiran to take charge at this time. She has just married into the mansion and doesn't know much about anything. Xiao Huan stepped forward and refused. Now the people in the mansion are all sick and dizzy. Who else is there except her? Xiao Jing said impatiently. There was no smile on his round face at all. When he looked at others, he looked a little gloomy, no longer smiling like before. Father. Xiao Hua and still wanted to say something, but Xiao Jing had already stood up and strode out. If it were not for the recognition, he would have gone out to inquire about the news at this time. As soon as Xiao Jing left, Third Master Xiao also left. The living room became quiet with a bit of a weird atmosphere. There should have been a lot of people who wanted to recognize the relatives, at least some elders of the Xiao family who were close to them. But now there was no one. Except for Xiao Jing and Third Master Xiao, the only one left was Xiao Hua and his wife. Third sister. After a weird silence, Zhao Shiran walked to Xiao Caihuan, smiled at her, and said softly, "Third sister, is third aunt in good health? What do you need? If you need anything, just tell me. Although I don't know how to take over now, I will definitely handle it well." Xiao Caihuan looked up at Zhao Shiran with a gloomy face. Her eyes were very cold, and she didn't respond to Zhao Shiran's kindness at all. She made a scene in the bridal chamber yesterday and was punished. After recognizing the relatives, she would be grounded in the hall. "Thank you, first sister." Seeing that she didn't say anything with a cold face, Xiao Kailing said. In fact, she didn't know what had happened yesterday. She only thought that her sister was also crazy to do such a thing. She had an inexplicable sense of guilt for Zhao Shiran. "Don't mention it. We will be a family from now on." Zhao Shiran smiled and looked at Xiao Wanru, who was standing on the side, and said, "Fifth sister, I may be very busy in the next month. If I do anything wrong, please forgive me." After saying that, she squatted down and bowed to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru moved aside and avoided her bow. She raised her watery eyes and smiled slightly. "First sister, you are too polite." She said it in a very distant tone, without any intention of intimacy. However, Zhao Shiran didn't take it seriously. She still looked at her with a smile and said, "Fifth sister, if you need anything, please make it clear to me. Otherwise, I really don't know what you mean. Third aunt is not in good health, so I will temporarily take care of her for a while. If I don't do well, don't be angry. I will try my best." She looked around at the three sisters and said in an increasingly gentle and appropriate tone. Seeing that she was so generous and took over the messy internal affairs without any complaint, Xiao Hua felt both distressed and sad, and inexplicably annoyed. His eyes fell on Xiao Caihuan and he frowned. The reason why everyone was dissatisfied with Zhao Shiran was that Xiao Caihuan inexplicably broke into her bridal chamber and made a scene, making it seem that Zhao Shiran was the culprit. Hearing Zhao Shiran's words, Xiao Wanru and the others bowed sideways to her and understood what she meant. "If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Grandma even grounded me in the Buddha hall." Xiao Caihuan was the first to turn around and leave. She didn't want to see Zhao Shiran for a while. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was right. Especially in the current situation, Xiao Caihuan increasingly felt that Zhao Shiran was a sinister person and didn't want to stay with her at all. "Third sister, I'll go with you." Although Xiao Kailing felt that Zhao Shiran was innocent, Xiao Caihuan was her biological sister after all, so she naturally followed Xiao Caihuan. "I didn't sleep well last night, so I'll go back first," Xiao Wanru said with a slight smile. Since everyone was going to leave, there was naturally nothing to stay. After everyone left, Xiao Wanru went to the Piaoyun courtyard. "Miss, is the third madam really not in charge of the internal affairs?" Yujia looked at the flower hall behind her curiously and asked in surprise. Xiao Wanru shook her head and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. "The third madam won't let it go so easily. The third branch was not valued at all. Her third uncle's position was just an idle one, so he didn't have much money in the past. Now that her two daughters had grown up, the third madam would definitely want to save more money. She hadn't been able to take charge of the family before, but now she had tasted the sweetness, so how could she let it go? Now she just threw everything to Zhao Shiran, which meant that she was outnumbered. Moreover, even for the sake of money, the third madam would not let Zhao Shiran go so easily. He had made such a mess on the first day he entered the mansion. Others might not know it, but how could the third madam not know that her daughter was obviously instigated by Zhao Shiran? Otherwise, it would not be possible for her to cause such a big trouble. However, she couldn't say this kind of thing, so she could only swallow her pride. Of course, the third madam wouldn't just stand by and watch Zhao Shiran remain unscathed. Miss, what does old madam mean? Yu Jie thought for a while and asked. She was worried about another aspect. The third madam was in charge of the dowry before, but now the first grandma is in charge of it. How can we figure it out in a short time? What does old madam mean? She actually gave the right card to the first grandma. Xiao Wanru's dowry involved a lot of things. Even though the third madam was very familiar with it, it was still very troublesome to prepare it. Now Zhao Shiran, who had just arrived in the mansion, was replaced by Yu Jie, who was really not confident. It will be fine, Xiao Wanru said lightly. She was not worried about this matter, which was related to the royal family. Neither the third madam nor old madam could neglect her. Moreover, such a thing had happened at the moment. Marquis Xing's mansion did not dare to owe the royal family anymore. Even his title had been demoted by one level. It was not only a relationship of one level, but also a strong warning. The people in the mansion could understand a lot. At first glance, Zhao Shiran could tell that he was a smart person. Did you find out anything yesterday? She asked casually. Chapter 861. She got up a little early this morning, so she hadn't heard the news from the servant girls. First grandma's 2 dowry maids did go out yesterday. I heard that they had been here several times before to put things in the bridal chamber, so they are quite familiar with our mansion, Yu Jie reported. Who did they go to? Xiao Wanru asked, hooked the handkerchief in her hand with her slender fingers and twirled it a little. Actually, it's nothing much. It seems that they went to the kitchen to ask for some food. They said that first grandma was hungry, but I asked around and they said that they all know the way. However, from the time they left to the time they came back, it was about an hour. In such a long time, not to mention the kitchen, even if it's the entire mansion, they must have visited many places. Yu Jie thought for a while and said. She had asked the people in the kitchen, and they had indeed been here. The servants guarding outside the newlyweds' room also said that they had left. However, after inquiring about it, she didn't find out which way they had taken, because they had been to and fro the mansion several times and didn't need anyone to take them, so they could come and go freely. Did they leave together? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and asked. No, I heard that one of them left first and didn't come back for a while, so first grandma sent the other one out. But in the end, they came back together. Yu Jie sorted out the news she had inquired. How long? Xiao Wanru frowned slightly and asked again. About an hour. It's quite a long time. Yu Jie affirmed again, even if first grandma really wanted to make something to eat, she could have asked the servants in the mansion to find it. Why did she have to send her 2 personal maids to accompany her to the wedding? Moreover, she even sent 2 of them out. Yu Jie murmured to herself. She really didn't understand what this great-grandmother was doing. There were many servants in Duke Xing's mansion. There were a lot of people standing in the yard and outside the main room. If there was anything, first grandma could just give an order. This was Marquis Xing's mansion. Although the 2 dowry maids were familiar with the terrain, they were not as good as the servants of Duke Xing's mansion. So there was no need for them to make a trip in person. Xiao Wanru fell silent and paused slightly. The 2 dowry maids must be Zhao Shiran's trusted subordinates. Such trusted subordinates should not leave Zhao Shiran's side on a day like yesterday. However, they left for so long. What did they do? Xiao Wanjun didn't believe that he went to the kitchen to ask for food. People like Zhao Shiran seemed to be very tolerant. She could still smile even though she had been wrong today. It could be seen how tolerant she was. If she was really hungry, she wouldn't go to the kitchen to ask for food. Even if she didn't bring food, there were some other things in the room to fill her stomach. Newlyweds were very careful about their behavior, for fear of giving their husband's family a greedy image. Many of them would not look for food in the kitchen even if they were hungry. But if they weren't looking for food, what were the two maids doing? Xiao Wanru couldn't figure out the answer at the moment. She felt that it was so confusing that she couldn't see it clearly or investigate it clearly. It seemed to be inextricably linked to him, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't find anything. Continue to keep an eye on his two maids. After thinking for a while, Xiao Wanru ordered. She couldn't find anything at the moment, but it didn't mean that there was nothing wrong. Zhao Shiran seemed to be a key figure, but she didn't know what the key was. She just had an intuition that she would definitely get something by keeping an eye on Zhao Shiran. Marquis Xing's mansion was once again pushed to the teeth of the storm. On the day when the eldest lineal daughter of Minister Zhao married the eldest lineal son of Duke Xing, something happened, which made the royal family lose face. It was said that the third prince was plotted against. The emperor vented his anger on Duke Xing and demoted Marquis' mansion to Marquis' mansion. The sign of Marquis' mansion, which had been hanging high before, was also taken down. When the news first came out, not many people believed it. They all thought it was nonsense. However, as more and more people talked about it, everyone believed it more and more. Someone even came to look at the sign outside the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion and said that the sign of Marquis' mansion, which had been hanging for a long time, had really been taken down. For a while, more and more people talked about it. Demotion? It was actually a demotion. Not only the common people were talking about it, but even the nobles were also in a panic. What did the emperor mean? Was he going to demote everyone? Or was he going to ask for the title that had been conferred to them? Not long after the founding of the country, many aristocratic families' titles had only been passed on for one generation, and there were still several generations to pass on. If their titles were demoted at this time, it would be a big deal. The punishment of demotion was really too heavy. But no matter what happened, one thing could be seen. Marquis Xing's mansion had really declined, and it was unlikely for the Xiao family to recover its former glory. Some people sighed secretly, some people watched the show in secret, and some people looked on coldly. The gate of Marquis Xing's mansion, which was lively yesterday, was deserted now. Only a group of people in the distance pointed at the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion and talked about the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion. At this moment, a group of carriages arrived at the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion. Some sharp-eyed people could see at a glance that it was the mark of Prince Chen's mansion. This was the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion, which meant that Prince Chen did not blame the fifth Miss Xiao, who was going to marry him. Instead, he even asked someone to send gifts over. Seeing the carriage stop and several servant girls walk in with all kinds of exquisite boxes, the idlers talked about it endlessly. They all said that the fifth Miss Xiao was lucky. Even though the whole Marquis Xing's mansion had fallen, Prince Chen still treated her so well. It seemed that he really liked the Mrs. character, not the Marquis Xing's mansion behind her. Hearing that Prince Chen's mansion had sent gifts again, Xiao Wanru asked Nanny Yu to receive them and then met Xiao Xuanzi, who came to send gifts this time. Fifth Miss, Master asked me to ask you if you need anything. If you need anything, just let me know. Xiao Xuanzi came over to greet her with a smile. Recently, he had been in a happier mood. There would be a new master in the mansion soon, and his master's health was getting better and better. Xiao Xuanzi felt more and more energetic. What did the imperial palace say? Xiao Wanru shook her head with a smile, rolled her watery eyes and asked. Nothing happened in the imperial palace. Master told you to rest assured. The purpose of Xiao Xuanzi's visit today was actually sent by Chu Luqian to comfort Xiao Wanru. The so-called gift sending was just a formality. What happened to those servants who were sent to the imperial palace? Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice. She did have something to ask Xiao Xuanzi. It was the best time for Xiao Xuanzi to come over at this time. Those people couldn't get anything out of them. They just said that it was the wine sent by the third madam. Our master was not in good health, so he didn't drink it. The other two masters just drank a little and didn't expect to get drunk. In fact, it may be that the two masters were not used to drinking the wine. In addition, the two masters had something on their minds, so they... Xiao Xuanzi didn't finish his words, but Xiao Wanru understood all of them. She didn't intend to investigate this matter further. On the one hand, she couldn't find anything out even if she investigated. Even if Marquis Xing's mansion didn't do a good job, they just sent a pot of wine, which was not bad wine. As for the reason that the two princes fought, they had fought in the imperial palace. At this time, it was not surprising that they fought again with the help of the wine. Maybe the two princes did it on purpose. Their anger was caused by Xiao Yanru. Now that they were in Marquis Xing's mansion, they had to throw a tantrum anyway. It was the best way to say that they were drunk. Is there any medicine in the wine? Xiao Wanru gently hooked the handkerchief with her index finger, pulled it a few times, raised her eyebrows and asked. It was so chaotic at that time. Not to mention the wine, even other things were all broken, so we couldn't find anything wrong with it at all. However, the two princes said that they fainted after drinking a glass of wine, and what happened later was also in a daze. They didn't wake up until our master poured 2 bowls of cold water into their mouths. Xiao Xuanzi squinted with a smile and answered in detail. Therefore, no one could be sure whether there was really something in the wine or not. However, the two princes said so, so Marquis Xing's mansion was accused of making the two princes lose their manners in front of others, and even their title was demoted. In fact, in terms of this matter, Marquis Xing's mansion was quite wronged. But in terms of everything, Marquis Xing's mansion was not wronged at all. Xiao Yanru dared to hook up with the two princes, so it was not too much to directly remove the title of Marquis Xing's mansion. What do you mean? After thinking it through, Xiao Wanru's heart became more and more at ease. There was a lazy smile at the bottom of her eyes, and she looked a little more relaxed. What I mean is that you don't have to worry about anything, 5th Mississippi. You just need to wait for the wedding. I will deal with anything. There will be nothing important in the palace. But if you need help, I will help you. Xiao Xuanzi hinted with a bit of complacency. Others thought that his master had lost his life and how powerful his subordinates were. In fact, it was just that his master didn't care about it in the past. Now his master cared about it, how could he be manipulated by others? Xiao Wanru felt warm in her heart. She blinked her watery eyes and said softly, "Tell Prince that I have nothing to do here. I will definitely tell my master when I go back. If 5th Miss has nothing to do, I will leave first. My master is still waiting for me to serve him in the palace." Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile in a good mood. Xiao Wanru nodded and motioned for him to leave. After he left, she opened an exquisite jewelry box in front of her, which was brought by Xiao Xuanzi for her just now. The jewelry box was very exquisite. When she opened it, there was an exquisite hua sheng in it. The raised phoenix wings were decorated with layers of luxurious gems, but it didn't look cumbersome and was very beautiful. The sunlight outside the window fell on it and dazzled the eyes of everyone in the room. Xiao Wanru's hand stopped beside the jewelry box. She felt inexplicably familiar with this hua sheng. Is 5th Miss here? A gentle voice came from outside the courtyard. Chapter 862. Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and gestured to Chu Lu. Chu Lu hurried out and saw Zhao Shiran standing there with her maid in the yard with a smile on her face. She hurriedly stepped forward and saluted, "First Grandma. Is your miss here?" Zhao Shiran asked softly. "Our miss is inside. Just now, someone from Prince Chen's mansion came to give our miss a gift and then left." Chu Lu stood aside and said with a smile. Zhao Shiran nodded and walked inside with a smile. Yu Jie had already lifted the curtain. "First sister-in-law." Xiao Wanru stood up in the main room and greeted her. "5th sister, you're welcome. I just come to see if you need anything here." Zhao Shiran said politely and looked at the jewelry box in front of Xiao Wanru. At first glance, she could tell that the jewelry box was not an ordinary one. However, the lid of the jewelry box was covered, so she didn't know what was inside. Was this the jewelry box specially sent by Prince Chen? "Thank you, first sister-in-law." After the two of them sat down, Xiao Wanru said with a faint expression, showing no intention of intimacy. In fact, I shouldn't have done this kind of thing, but now I can only inconvenience you. It's my first time in the mansion, so I may not know some of the rules in the mansion. Please point out my mistakes, fifth sister, and I will definitely correct them. Zhao Shiran said modestly. As a newly married woman, she had to deal with the internal affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion on the first day. At this moment, she was so busy that she didn't even have time to have lunch. It really made people feel sorry for her, but she didn't complain at all. For this reason, she could leave a good impression on others. First sister-in-law, you've worked hard. Xiao Wanru still looked very indifferent. Did Prince Chen say how the imperial palace would deal with this matter? Just now, my father sent someone to ask me. Zhao Shiran sighed and said softly. She said it very honestly. It was not a coincidence that she happened to appear in the Piaoyuan courtyard at this time, so she didn't hide it at all. If it were anyone else, even if they had some doubts about Zhao Shiran before, they would think that she was a sincere person at this time. She even said such things behind her back, so she was also a sincere person. Just now, the eunuch of Prince Chen's mansion came over. He didn't say anything, so I didn't ask anything. If you had come a few steps earlier, you could have asked him directly. Xiao Wanru smiled and said elegantly and indifferently. It was not easy to answer. Zhao Shiran choked for a while and then said with a smile, since Prince Chen didn't say anything, it's the best. Such a big thing has happened in our mansion. Grandmother and third aunt are both ill. If the servants still talk nonsense, our mansion will not end well. Zhao Shiran's smile was very forced. Speaking of this matter, it was really an undeserved disaster. It was a good banquet, but it actually caused so much trouble. As a new bride, she was not favored by her husband's family, and now she had to manage the house. No matter how she looked at it, Zhao Shiran was at a disadvantage. Shang Lutu, and she said, Chio, and Quebec. After a moment of silence, Zhao Shiran stood up and said, Fifth sister, since there is nothing else, I will go back first. If you have any news, please send it to me first. We have been demoted from the Duke's mansion to the Marquis's mansion and become the joke of the whole capital city. Now we should unite against the enemy and not let others see more jokes. She meant to bind the whole Marquis Xing's mansion together and work together. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth silently, and then nodded and said, You're right, Chiu. Seeing that Xiao Wanru didn't oppose her, Zhao Shiran breathed a sigh of relief. Now that she had married into Marquis Xing's mansion, she certainly didn't want anything to happen to Marquis Xing's mansion now. After sending Zhao Shiran to the door, Xiao Wanru returned, sat in front of the chair, opened the jewelry box, and took out the exquisite huasheng in it. She felt it looked very familiar. However, after thinking about it carefully, she couldn't remember. She gently twisted her fingers, and rays of golden light flashed in the sun, illuminating the sight of everyone in the room. Miss, can I wear this huasheng now? Yu Jia asked. No. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Even though she was the princess, she couldn't wear such an exquisite huasheng. There were 9 hairpins selected from the phoenix on the huasheng, which were not custom-made by the princess, but by the empress. Since it's not Prince Chen's, why did he send it here? Yu Jie was shocked. She asked this question because she saw the phoenix just now. It's not newly made. Xiao Wanru looked down at the huasheng in front of her carefully and said. There were traces of wear on the lines, which showed that it had been used for a long time. Then could it be Prince Chen's mother's? Chu Lu thought of another answer and said in surprise. Although Chu Luchen was only Prince Chen, his mother was the empress of the late emperor. If it was her relic, it was reasonable for it to have this kind of huasheng. It should be. Xiao Wanru also guessed so. She turned the huasheng in her hand again, but still couldn't remember whether she had seen it or not. She always felt that she should have seen it, but her mind was blank and she couldn't remember whether she had really seen it or not. Since it belongs to the late empress, why did Prince Chen give it to you at this time? Yu Jie still didn't understand. This thing was a relic, and it was reasonable for Prince Chen to want to give it to her master. But now it was sent here, and she couldn't wear it. Why did he give it to her? Shouldn't he give it to her after she married into Prince Chen's mansion? Xiao Wanru turned the huasheng in her hand again, and then frowned slightly in the shining reflection of the huasheng. What was the purpose of this huasheng? It was impossible for Chu Luchen to give this thing away for no reason. So who did he do it for? As her eyes flickered, her eyes became deeper and deeper. Put it away first. Xiao Wanru couldn't figure it out at the moment, so she carefully put the huasheng in the jewelry box and then asked Yujie to put it away. At this time, Nanny Yu came in a hurry. After entering the door, she bowed to Xiao Wanru and said, "Miss, there is news from the Imperial Palace." What news? Xiao Wanru was stunned for a moment. She thought that Nanny Yu was talking about the servants sent to the Imperial Palace by Marquis Xing's mansion. Didn't Xiao Xuanzi just say that there was nothing serious? It's about the consort selection. It's all over the place now. Nanny Yu had just come back from outside and came to report after hearing some rumors on the street. What do you mean? Xiao Wanru asked with interest. Miss Qi has become Prince Zhou's concubine, and another miss has become Prince Yu's concubine. Both Prince Zhou's and Prince Yu's concubines didn't participate in the consort selection this time. However, there are a few new S in the palace, and First Miss is also on the list. Princess Zhou and Princess Yu haven't been engaged? Xiao Wanru said in surprise. It's not that they haven't been engaged. It's said that they are not among the selected beauties. Infanta Yuan is Princess Zhou, and Miss Zhang is Princess Yu. Prince Xian is too young, so it's said that they haven't been engaged yet. Originally, Commandery Prince Qing's mansion also sent one, but it's said that Commandery Prince Qing has been engaged and already has a princess, so they didn't send another one. Nanny Yu said. Xiao Wanru couldn't remember who Princess Yu was in her previous life, but she really knew Princess Zhou in her previous life. It was indeed Infanta Yuan. When Infanta Yuan came to Marquis Xing's mansion, Xiao Wanru had met her once. She didn't expect that after so many twists and turns, it was still her. Her eyes involuntarily became a little colder. She didn't participate in the consort selection, but she still became Princess Zhou. It could be seen that she had been engaged long ago, but she hadn't heard anything about it before. The Empress had blocked the news very well. As for Princess Yu being Zhang Qilan, she didn't expect that Zhang Qilan had left the Imperial Palace early. The so-called consort selection was just a formality. She didn't expect that she could be selected in this way, which really made people feel speechless. However, thinking that she was supported by Prime Minister Zhang, some things seemed to be explainable. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou each have a princess and a concubine. Commandery Prince Qing has a princess, and First Miss Qi is now the concubine of Prince Zhou. The imperial edict has been released now, and it should have been notified at this time. The beauties who didn't stay have also left the imperial palace one after another. Nanny Yu had been with Xiao Wanru for a period of time, and now Xiao Wanru was more and more at ease in handling things. She was no longer rash, and could also do things concisely and clearly. She seemed to be a completely different person from when she was in Jiangzhou. Of course, there was the help of Nanny Zheng. Let's wait and see. Xiao Wanru said very calmly. She had thought that this matter was far away from her. After all, her marriage with Chu Luchen had been engaged long ago. But she didn't expect that it would be related to her so soon. The next morning, the imperial edict came and asked her to enter the imperial palace. Old Madam specially called her over and repeatedly told her to be careful with her words and deeds in the imperial palace. She also repeatedly warned her that there could be no more accidents in the current situation of Marquis Xing's mansion. She also hinted that if something happened to Xiao Wanru, she might not be able to keep her position as the future Princess Chen. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and stood in front of Old Madam. Seeing that Xiao Wanru was quite obedient, Old Madam was quite satisfied. She reached out to touch her dull and painful head, waved her hand and said, "I've said what I want to say. Next, it's up to you." I can only help you to this point. She said it as if old madam was wholeheartedly worried about Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and glanced at old madam. Then, under old madam's instruction, she smiled softly and left with her servants. The carriage in the imperial palace had already been prepared at the gate of the mansion. Yujia accompanied Xiao Wanru to get in the carriage and went all the way to the imperial palace. When they arrived at the palace gate, the carriage stopped. Yujia jumped out of the carriage first and then went to help Xiao Wanru, who had just gotten out of the carriage. The palace sedan chair had been waiting at the second gate. Xiao Wanru got in the palace sedan chair, and Yujia waited beside her all the way to the imperial palace. In the palace sedan chair, Xiao Wanru frowned slightly. She didn't think that she should enter the imperial palace at this time, so why did the imperial palace send her in so anxiously? She pulled the handkerchief in her hand hard, and her eyes were deep. Chapter 863. The palace sedan chair landed in front of the Fengyi Palace. Looking at the tall imperial palace in front of her, Xiao Wanru frowned slightly. It turned out to be the Empress's decree. She had thought it was the Empress Dowager. A palace maid had been waiting there for a long time. Seeing Xiao Wanru coming over, she came up with a smile and said, "Fifth Miss Xiao, the Empress is waiting for you. Please come with me." Xiao Wanru nodded, left Yujia outside, and followed the palace maid in. When she arrived at the main hall, she saw that there were already a few people sitting beside the Empress. She immediately bowed to the Empress. Although the Empress, who was sitting above, had a smile on her face, the smile lacked warmth. Her eyes fell on Xiao Wanru like ice. The laughter above the main hall suddenly stopped strangely. Several people sitting on the side could sense the displeasure in the Empress's eyes. They couldn't help but secretly think about the most suitable position to put Xiao Wanru in. The people in the palace were the best at reading people's minds. Someone had already looked at Xiao Wanru with a bit of sarcasm. She was just engaged to Prince Chen. It was really hard to say what would happen in the future. Even though Prince Chen was favored, this Princess Chen was not necessarily the case. Look, the Empress's meaning was already very obvious. Thinking of what Duke Xing's mansion had done recently, there was indeed nothing praiseworthy. First, it was the matter of the first Miss Xiao, and then it was the matter of the two princes at the banquet of the first young master of Duke Xing's mansion. No, now it was not Duke Xing's mansion, but Marquis Xing's mansion. Thinking of this, someone immediately let out a low mocking laugh. Although it was very low, it broke the silence in the main hall. "Get up," the Empress said coldly. The palace maid helped Xiao Wanru up and sat down on a chair on the side. After sitting down, Xiao Wanru looked at the few people sitting on the side. Coincidentally, she knew most of them. Commandery Princess Yuan En and Zhang Qilan were both present. Not only them, but there was also Qi Rongji. There was another lady whom he did not know, but he had seen her a few times during the consort selection. She might be Prince Yu's concubine. As for the other two beside the Empress, they were beautiful and well-dressed. They should be the favored concubines in the palace. Now the man, who was waving a round fan and covering his smile, looked Xiao Wanru up and down a few times and suddenly said to the Empress with a smile, "This is Duke Xing, no, the fifth miss of Marquis Xing's mansion." "Look, I can't remember. Now there is no Duke Xing's mansion, only Marquis Xing's mansion," the woman said with a charming smile, as if she had asked casually, but her sarcasm toward Xiao Wanru was obvious from her words. "Li Baolin is right. I also can't remember it. I have been called Duke Xing's mansion for so many years, but it suddenly became Marquis's mansion. It's really unexpected," another woman in gorgeous clothes said with a charming smile. One could tell from his words that he did not have good intentions. Xiao Wanru listened very calmly to the two concubines gossiping about her mansion. Her expression did not change at all, as if they were not talking about her. The two concubines looked at each other and became more and more disdainful. Needless to say, this future Princess Chen was not a powerful figure. She did not even dare to say a word of rebuttal. The Empress really valued her too much. She was timid, so there was nothing to be afraid of. If the ancestors of the Marquis's mansion knew that the descendants were so disappointing, I wonder if they would get up from the ground to settle accounts with these descendants. I heard that the old duke was a hero of the generation. He fought the world with the former emperor. Now such an unfilial descendant did not carry forward the duke's mansion, but declined so quickly. The woman fanned herself twice and looked at Xiao Wanru with more and more sarcasm. There was nothing to be afraid of a timid Princess Chen. If she could step on her, of course, she would step on her. Didn't the Empress mean that she didn't like her? In this case, of course, she had to step on her in front of the Empress. Xiao Wanru raised her eyes to look at the Empress. The Empress turned her head and gave a few orders to the palace maid behind her, as if she did not hear the concubine's sarcasm. Fifth Miss Xiao, do you think it makes sense? I heard that your father used to be the heir of Duke Xing's mansion, but unfortunately, he died early. If your father was still in charge now, this disaster might not have happened. Seeing that the Empress ignored her, the other concubines simply pointed at Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru took a deep breath, and there was a chill in her watery eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, making her look beautiful and charming, but the most conspicuous thing was her coldness. What does this Empress mean? Can I trouble this Empress to explain it clearly? I'm still young, so I don't really understand the meaning behind your words. Do you think my father is not worthy of being the heir of Duke Xing, or do you despise my grandfather? As soon as these words came out, the whole hall immediately fell silent again. The few people who had been talking immediately stopped talking and looked at Xiao Wanru in astonishment. The Empress moved her eyes over and looked at Xiao Wanru. Seeing that she was looking at the 2s in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, she couldn't help frowning. When Xiao Wanru accompanied Xiao Yenru before, she had met her several times. She knew that Xiao Wanru was a gentle and beautiful beauty. Even though Xiao Wanru had not fully grown up, she could see how beautiful she would be in the future. Therefore, she was not too surprised that Chu Luchen liked Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru was good-looking and had a strong maternal grandmother. But no matter how strong her maternal grandmother was, she was a delicate, beautiful and pure girl. Such a girl was actually very easy to deal with. But what did the current situation mean? Seeing that the 2s were shocked by her words, Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and still looked at the 2s, as if she didn't know that her words made the whole hall quiet down. You, how dare you? And stood up angrily. Recently, she had been favored by the emperor very much. Even in the imperial palace, no one dared to treat her like this, let alone a miss from a minister's mansion. Did I say anything to make your highness angry? Didn't your highness keep talking about how my mansion was just now? I don't know which mansion your highness comes from. It must be a noble family. Xiao Wanru tilted her head with a bit of a young girl's coquettishness and even a trace of ignorance, which made her look quite cute. However, in the eyes of this cuteness was a strong provocation. For a moment, she was so angry that she frowned and widened her almond-shaped eyes. She scolded angrily, "Where did this unruly person come from? How dare you speak like this in front of the Empress? Kneel down." There were few families in the capital city that could compare with Duke Xing's mansion. This was born in a declining aristocratic family, so how could it be compared with Marquis Xing's mansion? Even if Duke Xing's mansion had become a Marquis's mansion now, it was still not comparable to her, a declining family. There was talking about the Empress. By pushing the Empress forward, Xiao Wanru was bound to deal with the Emperor. There was secretly complacent. Today, she came here to help the Empress to annoy Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru stood up, turned to the Empress with her watery eyes, and apologized to the Empress, "I'm guilty. Please punish me, Your Highness." Sure enough, she was still timid. It was easy to deal with her. For the time being, she could not go too far. The Empress relaxed her face, slightly raised the corners of her mouth, and was about to say a few words. However, Xiao Wanru had raised her head and said with a pair of bright and beautiful eyes with a bit of coldness, "Your Highness, I'm guilty, but these two concubines also seem to be at fault. I don't know whether my maternal grandmother offended these two concubines or my grandfather offended these two concubines. Of course, it may also be that Prince Chen dislikes me and provokes me everywhere. What do you mean? Since she had entered the imperial palace today, Xiao Wanru had made up her mind. She had shown weakness in front of the empress before because her marriage with Chu Luchen had not been made public and her identity was unknown. She was really just the daughter of a minister. Especially at that time, Xiao Yanru had made mistakes everywhere, so she should be more cautious in her words and actions and not make any mistakes. Now she was already the future Princess Chen. Not only her face but also Chu Liuchen's face was at stake. If she gave in today, Chu Luchen would also be trampled on. Therefore, even if the empress did not like it, she would not give in today. No matter what the empress's intention was, she did not intend to give in today. The empress's face was very ugly. She did not expect that Xiao Wanru, who looked delicate and tender as if she had not fully grown up, would say such sharp words. Not to mention the first two reasons, just the latter reason alone would make the 2s bear the consequences, not to mention that she, the empress, would also be implicated. Others did not know what the emperor meant, but how could she not understand it? Your Highness, you have to uphold justice for me. The fifth miss of Marquis Xing's mansion despises the members of the imperial palace and dares to say such words in front of you. She is too presumptuous. The 2s were stunned at first, then became angry, and then flew into a rage out of shame. They suddenly stood up, and then knelt in front of the empress with a plop and cried loudly. One of them even messed up her clothes and hair, looking as if she had been torn and beaten. Your Highness, please uphold justice for me. I don't want to live anymore. How could the daughter of an official say such words? The other, who also looked delicate, suddenly stood up and hit the pillar on one side. The palace maids on both sides were startled. They hurriedly rushed over to hug her and then rolled into a ball. The solemn main hall of the Fengyi Palace immediately became as chaotic as a vegetable market. The sound of crying was accompanied by the sound of people shouting to hit the pillar, which was really noisy. The empress's eyes slid across the faces of several noble ladies and finally fell on Xiao Wanru's extremely calm face. The facial features on Xiao Wanru's face were so exquisite and beautiful that it made people jealous, but she was also so calm that it was unbelievable. Xiao Wanru could still be calm when she quarreled with the two favorites of the emperor. Even the empress had to admire Xiao Wanru's self-restraint. The emperor has arrived. The sharp voice of a eunuch came from outside the main hall. Immediately, the 2s, who had been crying, immediately quieted down. Chapter 864. What's going on? After the emperor sat down and saw the scene in front of him, his face turned cold. Your Majesty, I don't want to live anymore. I just asked about Marquis Xing's mansion, and 5th Miss Xiao satirized that my family background was not as good as hers. I was so angry that I argued with her, and she even pushed me and my sister. Your Majesty, I have embarrassed you. I can't live anymore. The, who had tried to commit suicide just now, knelt a few steps and cried with tears and snot. This content really surprised Xiao Wanru. She was really capable to talk nonsense in front of so many people. There were a lot of people present just now, but most of them were from the Empress's palace. The rest were the misses who were about to enter Prince Yu's mansion and Prince Zhou's mansion. The Empress didn't speak, and no one dared to answer. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please give us justice, Your Majesty. Another also cried. The current situation of the two of them was simple. One was more embarrassed than the other, and her words directly pointed out that it was all because of Xiao Wanru that they were in such a situation. The S in the palace deserved to live in the palace. They were proficient in slandering, and pointing fingers at others. With just a few words, they made Xiao Wanru fall into a disadvantageous position. Zhang Qilan moved her body. She actually wanted to explain for Xiao Wanru, but her sleeve was grabbed by Infanta Yuan Pen, who shook her head silently at her, indicating that she should not act rashly. The two of them had known each other for a long time, and they had gotten along well in the past. Zhang Qilan knew that she had good intentions. At this time, it was not her turn to speak, but seeing that Xiao Wanru was wronged by 2S, she was so angry that she turned to look at the Empress. At present, only the Empress could explain the situation at that time, and only the Empress could speak at this time. However, the Empress looked very calm at the moment. She pursed her lips tightly and didn't mean to help. Princess Yuan shook Zhang Qilan's sleeves again, indicating that she should continue listening. Zhang Qilan nodded helplessly. Xiao Wanru didn't see the interaction between the two of them. She stood with her head lowered and listened quietly to the 2S pushing all the blame to her. She was not surprised by the Empress's silence. The Empress's attitude towards her was originally unfriendly. Even if she wore a smile on her face, it just looked like a cold mask. It was impossible for the Empress to help her explain that she didn't beat or scold these two concubines. It was already good enough that she didn't step on her at the critical moment. The Empress vented her dissatisfaction with Xiao Yanru and dislike of Marquis Xing's mansion on her. "Uncle, what's going on? Is this a market?" A lazy voice suddenly came from outside the hall. It sounded a little sinister. The Empress looked up and saw Chu Luqian standing at the door with his hands behind his back. Her heart skipped a beat. In the shadow of the light, Chu Luqian no longer looked sunny and gentle. Instead, he looked gloomy and cold, which made people feel scared. As he walked in slowly and saw the smile on his face, it made people feel a little warm. In fact, it was Prince Chen who was as gentle as jade. He walked up to the Emperor, bowed to the Emperor, and also to the Empress. Then he sat down on a wide chair on one side. He looked up and down at the 2S who were quarreling with each other with his beautiful eyes and said with disdain, "Uncle, where did these two come from? What did he do to make himself look like this? They are just two women. If you have something to do, just let others interrogate them. Uncle, why do you dirty your hands?" Chu Luqian said casually. His eyes were clear and elegant, which made his beautiful face look more beautiful. However, his words made the 2S tremble. "Your Majesty, please do me justice. It's all 5th Miss Xiao's fault. I've lost face for your Majesty. I'm too ashamed to see your Majesty. I'd better die." The crying came to her senses. She continued to cry and seemed to want to get up and hit the pillar. The palace servants were in a panic again. They were afraid that she would really hit the pillar, which was a big crime in front of the Emperor. "Why do you drag her? Since she wants to die, just let her die," Chu Luqian said lightly. His words made everyone turn their eyes to him. At this moment, his beautiful and pure face was no longer pure and gentle in everyone's eyes. "Your Majesty, is she right? Did 5th Miss Xiao hurt her?" Chu Luqian raised his eyes to look at the Empress as if he didn't see the horror in everyone's eyes. His words were very direct. The Empress couldn't avoid it. She could have pretended to be plausible, but now she couldn't. Even though most of the people in the palace were her people, this matter couldn't be kept a secret with the presence of others. The truth would eventually be found out. She coughed in a low voice as if she had just woken up from the shock and said, "Your Majesty, they did this on their own. 5th Miss Xiao didn't hurt them." The Empress's words were very pertinent. It seemed that she was standing on Xiao Wanru's side and helping Xiao Wanru, but she didn't explain that the 2S said that Xiao Wanru had satirized them first. Xiao Wanru raised her eyes to look at the Empress. Seeing the Empress smile at her kindly, she bowed sideways to the Empress and still remained silent. It was not her turn to speak at this time. Since Chu Luqian was here, she was very relieved. "Your Majesty, do you mean that they framed 5th Miss Xiao? 5th Miss Xiao has been staying in the boudoir for a long time and has little contact with people, so she shouldn't have provoked many people. Is it because of me?" Chu Luqian looked at the 2S, who didn't dare to cry anymore, and suddenly smiled. The smile on the Empress's face froze. Chu Luqian was really too difficult to deal with. She just said such a standard sentence, but he actually said that she wanted to expose the 2S. The 2S did such a thing to please her. In the past, the 2s were smart and fawned on her. As long as she showed a little disgust and displeasure, they would immediately follow her orders. They could be regarded as very useful subordinates of hers. She didn't want to be defeated here, especially in her hands. In fact, it's not a big deal. It's just a quarrel between unmarried girls. Come and help them up. How can they be so presumptuous when the emperor is here? The empress said slowly. She said it very gently, and it was obvious that she wanted to make peace. Uncle, my princess has been humiliated in this way. I really can't swallow it. Chu Luchen smiled with a bit of evil and raised his eyebrows. The empress was willing to make peace, but he was unwilling. How could his people be bullied casually? Come and beat them down. Each of them will be flogged 10 times. The emperor looked at Chu Liuchen's face and said coldly with a gloomy face. 2 eunuchs came forward and dragged the 2s down. Your Majesty, please spare our lives. We dare not do it again. Help, Your Majesty. Seeing that the situation was not good, the 2s begged for mercy loudly. This time, they really cried. They had thought that the empress would definitely think highly of them if they did what she wanted. They didn't expect that they would attract the emperor's attention. What was more unexpected was that Prince Chen would appear and protect 5th Miss Xiao wholeheartedly. The 2s regretted it. If they had known that Prince Chen was so protective of his wife, they wouldn't have done that just now. Even if they didn't die this time, they would probably be laughed at by everyone in the imperial harem. The 2s were regretful and angry. Your Majesty. The empress's face changed, and she really wanted to save them. Your Majesty, this matter is not something that I should meddle in. But since the empress is kind, I will meddle in it for the empress. If the people in the imperial harem are all such slanderous people, there will be no peaceful days in the imperial harem. Your Majesty, you should be more careful. The emperor reprimanded in a cold voice, which meant that he also reprimanded the empress. The empress was so angry that she gritted her teeth secretly, but there was nothing she could do. She had known that the emperor was partial, but he had never been partial to her, but to Chu Luchen in front of her. He was like this when he was young, and when he grew up, he was still like this. He embarrassed her in front of so many people. The empress took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in her heart, and warned herself again and again. Then she slowly raised her head with a gentle smile on her face. She bowed to the emperor and said, Your Majesty, you are right to reprimand me. It's all my fault. I thought that since we are all Your Majesty's people, you should be more lenient. Your Majesty, you are really kind. Although the emperor's voice was cold, his expression softened. He looked at the people around and said meaningfully, Are these all of them? Yes, these are all of them. The empress said with a smile, as if nothing had happened just now. The 2 concubines had been dragged away far away, and no one knew where the punishment would be carried out. The main hall had returned to peace and tranquility. Xiao Wanru and the others had been arranged to sit down again. The emperor glanced at the group of women and nodded. He had seen most of these candidates, but there were also some he had not seen before. At this time, he looked at them and felt satisfied. However, when his eyes fell on Xiao Wanru, he frowned and was not very satisfied. The dissatisfaction came from Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru's character made the emperor feel uncomfortable at the thought of it. Now, although she was his concubine, she was actually sent to a corner far away, just like being sent to the cold palace. No matter how beautiful she was, there had never been a lack of beauties in the palace. Of course, the emperor would not fall in love with a vicious woman who might even cause brothers and sons to fight with each other. The reason why he sent her to the palace was to prevent Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou from fighting again because of this woman. At present, the 5th Miss Xiao gave the emperor a feeling that she was too charming. At such a young age, she was almost born to be charming. Even among the beauties, she was still a beauty. Fortunately, there was a trace of coldness in her eyes and eyebrows, which diluted her charm. But because of this, her eyes were more attractive. Would his nephew's body really be able to take it? The emperor looked at Xiao Wanru and frowned more and more. He regretted agreeing to the Empress Dowager's marriage. Chapter 865. The emperor's eyes fell on Xiao Wanru coldly, and his powerful aura suppressed her. Even if she lowered her head, she could feel the emperor's strong displeasure. Xiao Wanru held the handkerchief in her hand and didn't understand how she had offended the emperor. The empress was secretly happy when she saw it. She could see that the emperor didn't like Xiao Wanru. That was good. It was good that he didn't like her. The emperor raised the corner of his mouth and said softly, although fifth Miss Xiao is a little young, she is steady and decent. She didn't make a scene just now. She didn't make a scene, but she still made a scene. Thinking of what the two S said before, which said that Xiao Wanru ridiculed them, the emperor was even more displeased. It seemed that she was also a troublemaker. She didn't make a scene, but did she make a scene? Empress, tell me, how did she make a scene just now? Chu Luqian asked with interest, with a smile on his beautiful face and bright eyes. The empress choked. That was true, but Xiao Wanru didn't say a few words just now, so how could it be called making a scene? With a hollow smile, the empress said, it's not a big deal. Fifth Miss Xiao is still young. She meant that it was indeed not a big deal that she made a scene because she was young, but she didn't say anything about it. I'm curious about how she made a scene. After 3 years of quiet cultivation in the nunnery, it is said that no matter how noisy she was, she couldn't make a scene. Chu Luqian rolled his eyes and said with a smile. The empress couldn't keep the smile on her face. After 3 years of quiet cultivation, if she was really a noisy person, she couldn't stand this kind of coldness and bitterness. Xiao Wanru could cultivate in the mountain for so long at such a young age, so it could be seen that she had a temperament. She couldn't be judged by her young age. The emperor glanced at the empress calmly with a trace of gloominess in his eyes. He didn't like it, but he didn't like it when the empress suppressed Xiao Wanru. Since the marriage had been arranged, Xiao Wanru's face was Chu Luqian's face. For this reason, the emperor would not allow the empress to suppress Xiao Wanru. Moreover, he should be able to endure the 3 years in the nunnery. With his temperament, he should not make a fuss. Chu Luqian was not in good health. If he really made a fuss, he might not be able to bear it. Maybe it was because he was a little charming. Thinking of this, the emperor's impression of Xiao Wanru changed a little. It's a good thing that he can cultivate in the nunnery for 3 years and observe mourning for his parents. The empress should reward him later, the emperor said. The empress did not dare to disobey. She could only nod softly and say, that's exactly what I want. Fifth Miss Xiao has always been very agreeable to me. I have wanted to reward her with some ornaments before. The empress summoned these people because she wanted to reward them with jewelry today. Hearing what she said, the first palace maid behind her understood and clapped her hands gently. Immediately a few palace maids came in from the side door. Each one of them was carrying an exquisite box with dragons and phoenixes carved on it. At a glance, one could tell that it was an item from the palace. Your Majesty, these are the gifts I prepared for them. They were originally intended to be rewarded to them. The empress pointed with her finger and said. The palace maids were divided into 2 rows. There were 3 people in the front and 2 people in the back. The ornaments in the front were bigger, while the ones in the back were smaller. The 3 princes had 3 concubines. Chu Luqian had no concubine, so the 2 behind should be for the 2 concubines. Seeing that the empress was so clear and detailed, it could be seen that she had taken it seriously. The emperor showed a faint smile on his face and nodded to express his appreciation for the empress. The empress smiled and asked the palace maids to send their respective ornaments to Xiao Wanru. There was also a palace maid standing in front of Xiao Wanru, who raised the box in her hand above her head respectfully. They hurriedly knelt down to thank the empress. These are prepared by me and the emperor for you. Originally, we came to the palace this time to summon you here to have a look. In the future, you will marry into the royal family and live a good life with your respective princes. don't have any false ideas. If you do so, what is waiting for you will not be these gorgeous ornaments." The Empress looked dignified and dignified. The warning in her words was very obvious, so she summoned them here today to warn them. Xiao Wanru rolled her eyes and had already understood the meaning of it. She immediately thanked the Empress together with everyone else. After they bowed, the Empress asked someone to help them up and let them sit down again. The palace maids opened the ornaments in their hands. A burst of pearls and jewels made everyone's eyes sparkle. At first glance, they knew that it was not an ordinary object. "These are specially made by me as a gift for you to add to your dowry." Seeing that they were all shocked, the Empress showed a smile on her face and said appropriately. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on a huasheng. The huasheng that she had seen before appeared in front of her. Although it was suppressed to the bottom, it was almost the same huasheng. She recognized at a glance that it was almost exactly the same as the one given to her by Chu Luchen. Wasn't such a thing only the Empress could wear? Why did it appear in the brocade box given to her? There were a lot of jewelry in the box, which could be said to be almost full. The huasheng was suppressed to the bottom. If she hadn't carefully examined it before, she really wouldn't have noticed it at the moment. Although the huasheng was expensive, the other jewelry in this box was also gorgeous. How could she distinguish it? Her long eyelashes fluttered twice. She raised her eyes calmly and looked at Chu Luchen, only to see that his handsome lips were slightly raised. He seemed to be in a good mood and his eyes were deep and quiet. After thinking for a while, Xiao Wanru walked to Chu Luchen and bowed deeply. "Fifth Miss Xiao, what can I do for you?" Chu Luchen asked lazily. "Your Highness, I dare not accept such a precious object directly," Xiao Wanru said with an embarrassed look in a low voice. However, the people beside her all heard it. The misses, who were originally about to reach out to take the ornament box happily, became embarrassed. This made them seem a little too anxious. "You don't like it?" Chu Liuchen's voice was also low, but everyone heard it and felt that his voice became gentle. Qi Rongji looked at Xiao Wanru and then at Chu Luchen, and pursed her lips. In fact, she didn't want to get close to Xiao Wanru. "How can I not like it given by your Highness?" Xiao Wanru said with a blush, but still handed the brocade box in her hand to him. However, she seemed to not know what to say and stammered. Chu Luchen seemed to understand. He reached out to take the ornament box and said, "You want me to keep it for you? Well, I'll reluctantly do it." After saying that, the ornament box fell into his hand. Xiao Wanru's face became more and more shy. Her delicate little face blushed, which made her more gorgeous and beautiful. The Empress almost looked at the scene in front of her in astonishment. She had thought that Xiao Wanru would refuse, but she didn't expect that Xiao Wanru would directly give the ornament box to Chu Luchen. "Fifth Miss Xiao, you don't like what I gave you?" The Empress looked a little unhappy. "I like it very much." Xiao Wanru shook her head and explained in a low voice. She looked a little bashful and seemed to be a little embarrassed to say it. Of course, it was not easy to refuse the gift given by the Empress. If she did not do it well, she would be charged with contempt of the royal family. Xiao Wanru would not be so ignorant to say such a thing. Moreover, the Emperor was still here. She could sense that the Emperor did not have a very good impression of her. "Since you like it, why don't you take it away but send it to Prince Chen?" The Empress's face became completely cold. If Xiao Wanru did not give a reasonable explanation, she would punish Xiao Wanru even if the Emperor was here. "Your Highness, in fact." Xiao Wanru looked more and more embarrassed. "Prince Chen also gave some gifts before. I asked someone to send them back and asked Prince Chen to keep them." Before she finished speaking, Xiao Wanru had already blushed. The Emperor understood. He looked at the charming and elegant young girl, who was blushing shyly, and then looked at his handsome nephew, who had a natural look on his face. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. "Good. Good," he praised casually. Of course, the Emperor was willing to see his nephew gain the upper hand. This meant that his nephew was in charge of everything. Sure enough, she was just a charming little girl who knew nothing. Otherwise, she would not have done such a thing. It was a good habit to ask her fiancé to keep good things for her instead of keeping them herself. The Empress's lips curved down. It seemed that she was smiling, but in fact, she could not smile at all. After the Emperor finished laughing, she said softly, jewelry are originally things that women should have. Prince Chen has a lot of things to do. Besides, he is not in good health. How can I bother him with these things? What's more, you two haven't. Speaking of this, the Empress glanced at Chu Luchen, which could be regarded as saving Chu Liuchen's face. But everyone understood the meaning of her words. She meant that the two of them had an affair before they got married, implying that Xiao Wanru's character was not good. Chu Luchen said lazily, Your Majesty, the marriage between me and 5th Miss Xiao has been arranged for a long time, but it has not been announced. Even if we have met and talked a few times, it should not be a big deal. Imperial Grandmother has sent a lot of things to 5th Miss Xiao before. At that time, it was inconvenient for her to be in the nunnery, so they were all left in my mansion. Even the Empress Dowager had acquiesced in their relationship. If the Empress said it again, it would seem that she was deliberately provoking the Empress Dowager. It had been arranged for a long time. Wasn't the marriage just granted? Qi Rongji's eyes narrowed. The jewelry given by the Empress is really good. After we go back, I will keep it for you. After saying that, Chu Luchen did not look at the Empress, who was a little pale because of anger. He picked up the jewelry box and weighed it in his hand, but he did not want to hold it. The jewelry box in his hand fell down, and the exquisite jewelry scattered on the ground, even some broken jewelry. Among them, the most conspicuous was an exquisite huasheng. The gold was slender and exquisite, and the jewels were gorgeous and shining. There was also a dazzling phoenix pattern on it. Chapter 866. Why is it here? The Empress stood up, turned around and asked the chief palace maid behind her angrily. This huasheng was obviously an ornament that only the Empress could wear, but now it appeared in Xiao Wanru's ornament box. I don't know. I'll go and ask what's going on. The chief palace maid knelt down with a plop and said with a trembling voice. Chu Luchen smiled lazily and said, Your Majesty, the people in the palace are really confused. Can this kind of thing be given as a gift? What's the use of such a servant? It was a formal ornament that only the Empress could wear, just like the Emperor's dragon robe, but it appeared in someone else's hands so casually. If he didn't find it now, how could he explain it in the future? Uncle, it seems that some people really can't bear to see me recuperate. After Chu Luchen finished speaking, he stood up and bowed deeply to the Emperor before the Empress could say anything. Uncle, I'm leaving. After that, he took 2 steps back respectfully, turned around and strode away. He was originally thin, but at this time he looked a little more lonely and cold. The Emperor felt pity for him and anger appeared on his face. Your Majesty, I can explain it. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Empress said in a panic. Your Majesty, if you can't even manage your own palace, just ask my mother to find someone else to manage it. Do you want to keep such a servant? The Emperor asked with a cold face. Your Majesty, please spare my life. I really don't know about it. It was released by someone else. I'll check it right away. Seeing that the situation was not good, the chief palace maid cried and begged anxiously. The Empress actually wanted to agree. This chief palace maid was her confidant and had helped her a lot. But seeing the Emperor's expression, she didn't dare to really agree. She wanted to push this kind of thing to other palace maids and eunuchs, and the Emperor would definitely not be satisfied. Having been in the palace for so many years, the Empress knew that the Emperor was furious at this time. The best way was to do as the Emperor said, otherwise she couldn't afford the consequences. Someone, take her away. She can't even handle such a small thing. What's the use of her? The Empress didn't dare to disobey the Emperor and lowered her head. Her Majesty the Empress, Her Majesty the Empress. The first palace maid shouted with a pale face. 2 old maids from the palace came over. One skillfully gagged her with a handkerchief, and the other tied her hands behind her back. They dragged her down together. Of course, this meant that she was not going to keep her life. All the young ladies in the hall lowered their heads and trembled. The palace maid who had been standing next to them and looked gentle and graceful just a moment ago, had lost her life in a flash. The royal family had always been like this, and so was the imperial palace. The emperor snorted coldly, stood up and walked out. When he was halfway there, he suddenly turned back and looked at the empress's face with a bit of sharpness. The empress's palace should be tidied up. If something always happens, I'm afraid the empress can't clean it up even if she keeps cleaning it up. The empress' face instantly turned white. Her lips trembled but she couldn't say a word. She watched as the emperor angrily disappeared from her sight. The emperor blamed her, and so did Xiao Yanru before. What happened just now reminded the emperor of Xiao Yanru. The hall became strangely quiet again. All the young ladies lowered their heads and didn't dare to breathe too loudly for fear of disturbing the empress. After a long while, the empress exhaled heavily and said in a weak voice, "You can all leave. Stay for lunch. I'm tired now. I'll go and have a rest first. Goodbye, Empress." They stood up and saluted the empress together. The empress nodded, held the hand of a nanny, and turned to go inside. "Mrs., please go to the side hall." A eunuch came over with a smile, reached out to the side, and then led the way. Everyone followed him to the side hall. Compared to the solemn main hall, the side hall was smaller, but it lacked the solemn atmosphere. They couldn't help but relax a little. "I was really scared just now. I wanted to help you, but I didn't dare." Zhang Qilan came over and took Xiao Wanru's hand, feeling that she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, the drama in the main hall happened one after another, causing her to have a lingering fear until now. "I didn't dare to speak either." Xiao Wanru smiled softly. These words resonated with Zhang Qilan. She nodded repeatedly and whispered in Xiao Wanru's ear, "Does the empress not like you?" Xiao Wanru shook her head with a wry smile, "I don't know either." Zhang Qilan looked around again. Seeing that no one noticed them, she put her head in front of Xiao Wanru again and asked in a low voice, "Is it possible that she vented her anger on you because of what happened to your big sister?" She didn't point directly at the empress, but the meaning in her words was the same. "Maybe." This time, Xiao Wanru didn't shake her head. There was a trace of coldness in her watery eyes. This was probably only one reason. The other reason should be Chu Luchen. The hua sheng, which only the empress could wear, appeared in her hands. Of course, it could be considered that she was plotting against the rules, but it was more obvious that it would make people suspect Chu Luchen. If she had such a hua sheng, then Chu Luchen could only be the future emperor. His disloyalty was obvious. Perhaps even if the emperor would not really do anything to Chu Luchen, he would not dote on him as much as in the past. A dam of 1,000 miles could be destroyed by an ant's nest. Little by little, this doting would always be worn away. After all, he was just a nephew. Perhaps she didn't suspect it was because of his health in the past. But now, when Chu Liuchen's health got better, he would become a roadblock for others. Today it was just a test. Fortunately, Chu Luchen had sent the hua sheng that his mother had worn before. Fortunately, he came today. Otherwise, this hua sheng would fall into her hands no matter what, and she would not be able to explain herself. "Let's go out for a walk." Zhang Qilan looked around and felt that it was more convenient for them to talk about some private things outside. Just now, the empress also asked them to walk around in the Fengyi Palace and did not restrict them. "Okay." Xiao Wanru nodded. "Where are you going?" "I'll go with you." Seeing the two of them get up, Infanta Yuan and also stood up and said with a smile. "Okay, then let's go together." Zhang Qilan said with a smile. The three of them went out together. Qi Rongji shrank in the corner and did not intend to follow them. The other miss looked at her and then at the three misses who were going out. In the end, she did not say anything. The three of them were all future princesses, while she was just a concubine. Her status was much lower than theirs. Fifth Miss Xiao and Prince Chen have known each other for a long time. Infanta Yuan said with a smile as she walked. Her eyes were gentle and gentle. Speaking of which, Fifth Miss Xiao and I can be regarded as cousins. If it was from the perspective of the two first princesses, it could indeed be said in this way. However, the two first princesses usually did not have much contact with each other. Moreover, Xiao Wanru was just a granddaughter, not a granddaughter. Your Highness, you're welcome. Xiao Wanru said politely and changed the topic. When Prince Chen was in Jiangzhou, he once lived in my mansion. Even if there was indeed some relationship between the two of them, Xiao Wanru would not be arrogant to call this infanta sister. When she first met this infanta, she was with Xiao Yanru. For this reason, Xiao Wanru would not take it lightly. Ningyuan Army General's mansion in Jiangzhou? Infanta Yuan's voice was not high, but it had a natural mellow tone, which could make people feel good after hearing it. Yes. Xiao Wanru nodded. She could not hide it from others. Almost everyone who had inquired about her knew it. I've met the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion. Infanta Yuan suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. I heard what? Zhang Qilan looked curious. She was a little older than Xiao Wanru, but in terms of bearing, she seemed to be younger than Xiao Wanru. I heard that the relationship between the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion and the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion is very bad. Infanta Yuan said with a smile. What happened 3 years ago had been widely publicized by Prince Cheng, and Qin Yuru's reputation had declined. If it weren't for Duke Yong's mansion, it would be normal for her to be locked up for a lifetime. Xiao Wanru smiled and said nothing. At that time, the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion and the general's mansion disliked Fifth Miss Xiao very much. I didn't expect that after so many years, the tables would turn. In the end, it was Fifth Miss Xiao who stood out. Infanta Yuan sighed and turned to look at Xiao Wanru. I heard that Prince Chen has always been cold-blooded, but just now he wholeheartedly protected Fifth Miss Xiao. Hearing her words, Zhang Qilan couldn't help thinking of what had happened before. Prince Chen seemed to really care about Xiao Wanru. She couldn't help feeling happy for Xiao Wanru and nodded repeatedly. You are so lucky. When I was in the Qin's mansion, I actually had a good life. General Qin, Aunt Shui, and Madame Dowager were all very kind to me. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said softly without any resentment, let bygones be bygones, but the kindness of raising me is incomparable to other kinds of kindness. This was an explanation for Infanta Yuan's words just now. She didn't sound complacent at all, nor did she blame the Qin's mansion. She even expressed her gratitude. This kind of bearing was already extraordinary and admirable. Infanta Yuan pointed to a pavilion not far away and stopped talking about the previous topic. Shall we go over there and have a seat? It should be too early for lunch. Xiao Wanru and Zhang Qilan nodded in agreement. They walked to the pavilion together, but when they arrived at the pavilion, they were stopped by a palace maid. Mrs., this pavilion hasn't been repaired yet. It was under repair before, so it's not convenient to go in. If you want to enjoy the scenery, it's more suitable to go to the pavilion in front. The scenery there is better and you can see further. The palace maid pointed to a pavilion on the left in front of them and said with a smile. The three of them glanced at it and felt satisfied, so they followed the palace maid and walked forward. Once they left, a part of the palace curtains that had been lifted up slowly fell to the ground.